What does that mean to you?
It means a program where we would allow people who actually didn't bring a bike or don't have a bike to go and check one out, ride it to a particular location, leave it, and then someone else could come and check it out and do the same sort of thing. It's almost like, probably the closest thing to it that we have is a cart rental at LAX. You know, when you pick up your baggage, you throw your credit card in there, you put some change in there, you get a cart. It's a very similar sort of concept that's been well received in Paris.
Also concerned about bicycle safety, District 3 Councilmember Dennis Zine wants to know about licensing for bicycles and how it works, and offers a suggestion as to how the licenses for bikes might be issued.
I know there's many young people that ride bicycles, and it reminds me of my young brother, who's now a senior citizen. He was involved in a bicycle crash when he was a youngster. He didn't have any identification. Do we still have licensing with the police department, or is there a licensing? Because what happens is someone is involved in a collision, a young person doesn't have a driver's license, police respond, they have an individual there, they may be knocked unconscious. Who do they notify? How do they get a notification? And I don't really see us pushing, as we did in the past, bicycle licensing, which was done Saturday at the police station. Is there anything about licensing which you can check that number, find out who the relatives are, etc.? Is there anything in place for that?
Yes and no. Per the municipal code, the city does still have a bicycle licensing ordinance. Bicycle licenses are obtained by patrons through one of two ways. Either they are sold by the bicycle vendor at the point of purchase, which we understand is rarely done now, or they are sold by your local police division. There is not a set date or set time to get a license, and it's our understanding a number of police divisions are unable to sell licenses at their locations. So the program has been somewhat dormant for a number of years. Staff has made a report and recommendation to T Committee that has been on hold, Transportation Committee. So currently the Bicycle Advisory Committee does not support the licensing program and would like to address identification of children in a different manner rather than bicycle licensing.
How do they recommend identifying a 10 or 12 or 13-year-old with identification?
There are a couple ways. We could work with LAUSD to develop some sort of program through them that would be a helmet, a sticker or something that goes within a helmet to be able to do that. Something we've discussed a little bit. At one point, LAUSD was interested in taking on the licensing program. We don't know if that is still the case, but it's something that's been on the table and off the table for a number of years now.
Encouraging staff to work with the Metropolitan Transit Authority, the MTA, District 4 Councilmember Tom LaBonge wants to develop bike facilities at MTA stations and requests the Department of Transportation to make bike racks look like bike racks.
I want a friendly amendment that you looked at working with MTA, every MTA site, that you create some type of bike facility at every MTA subway station, and may I add, light rail station in the city of Los Angeles. There's no reason, there's a lot of space there that's underutilized, and to create a bike shop, if you will, and allow entrepreneurship to take forth in this, it would be worthy of that. I don't know if we have it yet, but I've seen this in other cities. They have this. It's very popular in Berlin and Paris, and we know how those cities have grown, and their densities are different than we are at this point here, but it's worth looking into. But certainly getting a bike shop at every MTA subway station. You have your MTA days. We were out there, Miss Gruhl, there at the Universal City, and they had a little temporary bike shop. Put them there all the time. You know, if we're going to get there, put them there. Put more bike racks that look like bike rats.
Relaying a story about a serious accident between a bicyclist and a car that he witnessed, District 7 Councilmember Richard Alarcon makes reference to the bicycle infrastructure and how important it is to some Los Angelinos.
It just didn't dawn on me, I've known for many years, but it just struck me again how inadequate this city is in terms of its bicycle infrastructure. And it also, in this particular case, pointed out to me how important the bicycle infrastructure is for people who need to work. That we keep talking about housing, jobs balance, and putting housing where the jobs are and jobs where the housing is. But one of of the best ways to do that is to have a well-defined bicycling infrastructure that is not just intended to help those who want to get healthy and have recreational use, but is intended for people in everyday use in an economy where gas prices are so high and where unemployment rate is higher than in our time in office, and where people need alternative forms of transportation to be able to survive. It just seems to me we have to be much more creative and focus much more attention on our bicycle infrastructure. So while I agree that there is so much of a lagging in terms of what we need, that bicycle sharing in and of itself is not going to have great impact, nor are we in a position to design the full-out program, I absolutely believe that we can identify specific methods of using sharing in specific locations or on specific projects or on specific lines so that we can move toward a city that is much more bicycle friendly, particularly for those who will be riding bikes to work. And so I urge you on, but I hope that it comes back with a positive attitude, not a negative attitude that we're not ready for this, so let's not do anything. Let's find out what we can do, even if it's very small, and then grow it.
And with that, we'll go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to know more about the bicycle services in Los Angeles, such as bicycle maps, bicycle clubs, and other bicycle programs, log on to the web at bicyclela.org or dial 311, your one call to City Hall. LA City View is the government access cable channel for the City of Los Angeles, featuring live coverage of City Council meetings and programming about City Department services and events. Now, if you have suggestions or comments about any of the programs you see here on Channel 35 or would like to receive a free viewer guide, call our viewer hotline at 213-473-3978. And remember, you can watch all Los Angeles City Council meetings live in their entirety on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays beginning at 10 a.m. On Sundays, you can watch the replay of all the week's meetings, also beginning at 10 a.m. Well, that concludes our program for the week ending October 3rd, 2008. On behalf of Chris Calnan and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Jack Popejoy. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
In the case of a disaster, you need to be able to communicate with emergency personnel and your support network, as well as to stay current with the latest information. Make sure all batteries are in good condition. Keep an extra supply of batteries on hand for your hearing aids or cochlear implants in your emergency supply kit. Rotate them regularly. Install both audible and visual smoke alarms, where at least one should be battery operated. And test them regularly. In case you're left without your hearing aid or cochlear implant, plan how to communicate with emergency personnel. Store pens, pencils, and a small notebook with your emergency supplies. Pre-printed messages with your medical conditions or allergies are also a good idea. In order to get emergency reports, determine which broadcast stations provide continuous news coverage that's signed or captioned. Only you know what can prepare and assist you and your family in case of a disaster. Are you prepared? For additional information, please contact the Department on Disability or the Emergency Management Department by calling the numbers on the screen or by dialing 311.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to Council Members Gruhl, Hahn, Perry, Ray. Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 7th, 2008. We are here in the John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m., save for the first Friday of the month when we get out to Van Nuys City Hall. Council President Eric Garcetti, and I am joined today by my colleagues, Council Members Wendy Gruhl, Janice Hahn, Tom LaBonge, Jan Perry, Ed Reyes, Bill Rosendahl, Greg Smith, Herb Wesson, and we are waiting one more member for a quorum. Councilmember Alarcon, Councilmember Cardenas. Councilmember Cardenas is here, so we have a quorum. Want to welcome our viewers on Channel 35, where we're broadcast live each meeting and rebroadcast in the evening. We're also available online through your computer at lacity.org for live streaming webcasts of our council meetings, and any past coverage is archived there as well at lacity.org, where there's a wealth of information on government services and ways to improve the quality of your life here in Los Angeles. Lastly, you can always use your telephone and call 213-621-CITY, which is a way to listen in from your telephone to the council proceedings or any of our committee meetings as well. With that, we have agendas in the back. Those are available online 72 hours in advance or in person here in Chambers or at the City Clerk's office. If you'd like to be heard on any of the items that are before us, fill out a speaker card in the back and hand it to one of the sergeants at arms. If you're closer to Van Nuys, you can always visit us in council chambers there and fill out a card, and we are able to hear your testimony here remotely in City Council. With that, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Weezer, LaBonge, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
All right. Sound like the FedEx guy today. We are still awaiting Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Weezer, and if they will make their way down as soon as possible. Mr. Weiss is expected at 10:30, and Mr. Parks and Zine are excused today. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
All right. Mr. Wesson moves. Mr. Reyes seconds without objection. Those will be approved.
Mandatory resolutions for approval.
All right. Mr. LaBonge moves, and Ms. Gruhl seconds without objection. Those will be approved as well. Next order of business.
Mr. President, this is Tuesday, and there's a flag salute for today.
Okay. If I can ask everybody, please rise in council chambers for our Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Reyes, would you be kind enough to lead us?
Thank you, my honor, Council President. Please, everybody stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. If we can run through the agenda, please.
Items 1 through 5 are street lighting district items. Notice for public hearing. Council should continue the hearings and present the ordinances on October 28th.
Okay, let's go ahead, if there's no objection, and continue those hearings till the 28th, and we'll keep those public hearings open. Next items, please.
Items 6 through 8 are street lighting district ordinances. Notice for public hearing. Council should have 12 members. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yeah, let's hold those till we have enough members for the first reading. Next item, please.
Item 9 is an item notice for public hearing.
Okay.
And there is a card on that.
We'll call that special for cards in the public. Next item, please.
Items 10 through 15 are items for which public hearings have been held. On item 11, there is a request to send that matter back to the Plum Committee.
Okay, is there any objection to sending that item number 11 back to Plum? Seeing not, we will go ahead and send that back. Item 10, if we can hold that for 12 members, please. And items 12 through 21 are before us.
Actually, 12 through 15, Mr.
I'm
President.
sorry, through 15. Any specials, 12 through 15, colleagues? 12 through 15, seeing none, let's go ahead and please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 16 through 21 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. If there any objection to consideration, if not, those are before us. Special items, Ms. Hahn?
16.
Ms. Hahn, Mr. Reyes? 18 for Mr. Reyes.
New thing where we just like.
Do we have cards in the public on any of these?
Not on the remaining items.
Okay. 17, 19, 20, and 21. Colleagues? Anybody else wishing to call item special? If not, let's take up the balance. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
On the supplemental agenda, item 22 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration. Okay. There is a card on that matter, and there is a substitute motion in the works.
Let's call that special for both of those. That will bring us back. I know before we begin the public comment, Mr. Reyes won't take 18 out of order, so I'd like to recognize Mr. Reyes on item number 18.
Thank you, Council President and colleagues. Good morning. It's a great day when you can wake up and know that the Dodgers will be taking their great team to the next level. Round of applause for the Dodgers. We have Howard Sunken here, representing the Dodgers. Number 18, colleagues, really is about celebrating, memorializing the great tradition that the Dodgers have brought to this town. We know they come from Brooklyn. They've been through so many fantastic seasons, have created so many memories for us. This action, this resolution, will essentially identify the Dodger property only as Dodger Town. It will not affect or impact surrounding communities, surrounding properties. So all the folks who live around Dodger Stadium need not to worry. This will just be on the Dodger property itself. Very appropriate, very timely. It is one of the most historic structures as far as baseball stadiums go, one of the oldest ones now, believe it or not. But just as significant is its future plans to build a tremendous facility that will be green-oriented, it will be a destination, another reason to visit Los Angeles, and it will continue to celebrate the greatness of our international metropolis. So with that, I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much. Go Dodgers, Mr. Reyes. Next we have Mr. Labange.
And Ed,
Get that hat out.
to catch this.
Oh,
a little high. Yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
that is out of order, Mr. Labange.
He'll catch it.
Come on. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, Ed, you're right on top of it. And this is great for the Dodgers. I think it's great for Los Angeles. I do feel a little of us is leaving because I'm proud that City Hall is 90012 and the Dodgers are in the same zip code. But I think that creates this energy, the love of what the Dodgers mean. They're always going to be in that location, and this will give them more opportunity to get recognition for the Dodgers. So I'm honored to second the motion, and I thank you, and I'll give you one more shot. Huh? All right. Hey, Janice, come on. Come on. All right. Her daddy helped bring the Dodgers to Los Angeles. Give the late, great Kenny Hahn a big hand.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange, and we wanted to wish you a very happy birthday from yesterday as well. We hope you had a great birthday. With that, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on this item and tabulate the vote.
Mr. President, actually, there were cards on this item.
Oh, my apologies. On 18, we have cards from John Walsh on item number 18.
I'm only
Good morning.
taking a minute on this.
Okay.
You know, you said it was out of order. Children, grown men throwing baseballs around. This city, a city where people are being murdered every day, where the gangs control the city, and middle-aged men are throwing. Now, if I threw something, I would be arrested, because there are two standards here, just like there were in the concentration camps, the guards and the inmates. I'm telling you, I'm tired of different names for neighborhoods. I live in Hollywood, but you know what? We changed the name of our neighborhood from Hollywood to Hollywood Village. Good for the Dodgers, but you give them everything they want, and incidentally, Dodgers are not going bankrupt. The city of Los Angeles is going bankrupt, and you get free tickets. Everybody who throws that ball gets free tickets from the Dodgers. I hope they win, but to hell with giving them public subsidies. 1 minute.
All right, that'll close our public comment. Yes, Mr. Reyes?
For the record, we do pay for our own tickets. I just want to make sure that was on the record.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. Matt Dowd?
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be in the Los Angeles City Council. But yeah, I don't agree with that. This is a human side of the City Council that I like to see. So I disagree with John Walsh. And I like to see Mr. Labange get involved in the city of Los Angeles, the Dodgers, one of the best exports we've got. Let's make it Dodger Town. Let's roll forward. Matt Dowd agrees with this one. Thank you.
All right, that'll close our public comment. If we can please prepare the roll on item 18 and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Send that forthwith without objection. If we can go to our general public comment now. We have a few cards from the public. Zuma Dog is our first speaker. After that will be Gene Port. Good morning.
Okay, yes, good morning. Zuma Dog is back in session. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much. The spirit of Los Angeles, the community that has really kept me going. And I've been in CD14, near Reyes' district and Weezar's district. The community has really rallied behind me. I thank you so much. City Council, there's a lot of new video. I've created a website, ZumaTube.com. Not YouTube, but ZumaTube, non-commercial. I post video. For example, I was on KNBC News 4. Thank you, by the way, to KNBC News 4, Paul Moyer. I'd like City Council to look at this because it was my, they called me into KNBC 4 for my presidential analysis. Thank you for that. And thank you to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger for taking my question. He was at Taylor Yard, and I did get to speak with Schwarzenegger personally about the Prop 1C, that this City Council votes on. Please go to ZumaTube to hear Schwarzenegger's response to Zuma Dog. And now I'd like to thank Councilmember Jose Weezar. I'm not allowed to directly, but the Eagle Rock Music Festival, in case you missed it Saturday, do not miss it next year. It was the best street event. I've lived all over the country, and I reminded Weezar at the event he had very little to do with it. I'm just kidding. He had a lot to do with it, and I enjoyed it so much. And something coming up this Friday, I invite everybody in the community. It's an economic task force coming to the Casa Princesa on York and 45th, just east of Eagle Rock Boulevard and York. There's a beautiful cafe, Wi-Fi. They've got karaoke, a sound system. All the activists I invite, all council members, we got to rally behind this business to help in these economic times. It really upscaled the place, and it's a real jewel and asset to York Boulevard. So please come out 45th in York this Friday night, 7 p.m., Zuma Dog Karaoke Review, and I'll be going over all the ballot measures. I'm not allowed to say things here like no on all ballot. Oh, I could say no on all ballot measures. We'll be talking about it this Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gene Port. After that will be Patricia Fryman. Good morning, Mr. Port.
Good morning. I often bring visitors from New York out to the Autry Museum, which is why I'm here. And they are always pleasantly surprised at the extent of the information they have there and the fact we are interested in Western history. Last time they did show me the plans they have for expansion and casually mentioned, hey, if I've got nothing better to do, I ought to come down and comment on them. And they really look good. The parking lot disappears from the building. The building becomes a good front against the freeway. It expands our knowledge of Western history and Los Angeles. And I certainly feel, as one who visits the Autry often, that their plans really are forward-watching and would be a big help not only to the city, but to all the visitors I take there from back east. So I'm really impressed by their plans for expansion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments this morning. Patricia Fryman is next. After that is John Walsh. Good morning. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning. I'm also here in favor of the expansion of the Autry Museum. My grandchildren have had some wonderful tours there, school tours, and my children love it. But what I want to point out, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could tell the story of the Native Americans as well as the Western expansion? I know there's the story of the Plains Indians in the museum, but if we could have the whole story of California Native Americans and all of the West, and it could be in one building where people would get the feeling, also the westward expansion and the stagecoaches and all, also the history of the Native Americans, and hear their story. And it needs to be in one location. We've got a wonderful plan there, and it just really is worthwhile and should go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Walsh is our next speaker. After that, we'll hear from Donna Pearman out in Van Nuys. Morning again.
John Walsh of No on Measure R. It's a train wreck. There's $1 billion in there that goes to Metrolink. And what is that money going to be spent on? Not a dime for safety. In fact, they went in the back room. They're going to do some legerdemain with changing their pots of money. And the $1 billion, if you vote for it, go to pay off the $1 billion for the people who were killed and maimed. Subway for the sea, perfect storm. That's what NTSB said about Metrolink. And there's a perfect storm brewing in that subway tunnel where you had a fire reported by the Daily News a few months ago in the Hollywood Tunnel. That's a fact. In fact, it was illegally placed on the ballot. It wasn't placed on the ballot until the governor signed on September 25th. Already they had sent out the ballots all over the world, the absentee ballots, with an illegal measure, and then the ballots returned. I will be talking to Deborah Bowen tonight, and at a meeting in Westwood. I invite you to at the Hammer Museum. Come out and tell her she's hooked in with these people. I'm telling you right now that Proposition R takes a half-cent sale out of your half-cent forever for 30 years. This county, this state cannot pay its bills due on the 30th. And you want to take $40 billion out on this one and on the faster than air, the super speed train, which will start in San Francisco and get halfway to LA. When the money, $10 billion, runs out, you want to spend $10 billion plus bonded indebtedness when we don't have money to even pay for the basics. Just keep voting for the bond measures, and we'll all be out at City Council holding it outdoors pretty soon.
Thank you. We'll next go to Van Nuys. Donna Pearman is our next speaker. After that, we'll come back for Daniel Wright.
Hello,
Good
Mr.
morning.
Garcetti. Yeah. Anyway, Miriam couldn't be here last Wednesday due to the Jewish holiday. She was with her father, Cantor Rabbi for services, and this week's another holiday. She wanted to talk about Council Number 08-1945 pertaining to city employees' retirement deferral. It's not right to tie up somebody's defer for infinity and say no on where it goes. There's not even an open season to choose where you want to go, say after 5 to 7 years. You want them to put it in a high-risk stock where this person can lose 25% of the portfolio. It's not right. Marion will be here at a later date for answers to her questions. Also, I don't believe Los Angeles should bail out Wall Street. This is caused by extreme greed. They want to have a lot more than everyone else. Greed is caused by a hatred of people they feel inferior or less smart than themselves. They do not care who they hurt. God will punish these people, like O.J. was finally punished 13 years after the fact. We can't bail them out. We can't bail out the CRA and the Grand Avenue Project. We have to say no to Prop R. There's no guarantee it will even ease congestion. They do not say which buses will increase, only about rail lines. Councilman Rosendahl and Councilman Weiss, you want to see congestion in West Los Angeles? Tear up Wilshire Boulevard for a subway to the sea. Say no to the gang tax. 30 million haven't fixed it yet. This won't either. People, you have to say no to parcel tax because the property tax is going to go way up. And I want for Rosendahl, I want to say ooh ee ooh ting tang walla walla bing bang. Ooh ee ooh ting tang walla walla bing bang. And vote for Eric Garcetti, the President of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pearman. Our next speaker is Daniel Wright. After that, we'll go back to Van Nuys for Rick Nightingale. Good morning.
Good morning. Daniel Wright on behalf of the Friends of the Southwest Museum, found on the web at www.friendsofthesouthwestmuseum.com or join the debate at www.blackhatblog.wordpress.com. Council members, last week we gave you a copy of the award-winning Mount Washington Homeowners Alliance History Guide for the Arroyo Seco. I will focus my remarks today on a remarkable man of the early Los Angeles history, Charles Lummis. The Lummis story instructs us all that under no circumstances should the pinnacle of Lummis's career, the founding and operation of the Southwest Museum within direct line of sight of his historic home, be unnecessarily ripped from its cultural context. This is what the Autry is asking you to endorse in its ill-conceived expansion in Griffith Park. A little history now from our brochure, which is the section regarding the history of the Arroyo Seco culture. The culture that nurtured Mount Washington was influenced as much by the 19th century European social, artistic, and political movement as by the verdant flora surrounding the young Arroyo Seco community. While it's true that Charles Lummis, an iconic figure of the era, was lured to the Arroyo Seco by its great beauty, he significantly imprinted his own character and interests on the area, ideals that remain his legacy today. Lummis popularized Local Southwestern, Native American, and Hispano-Catholic cultures, coined the term Southwest, worked to restore and revive California missions, served as the city editor for the Los Angeles Times, edited the nationally read Land of Sunshine magazine, and founded the Southwest Museum, Los Angeles' first museum. It was Charles Lummis that drew so many people from the East to here in Southern California and made the difference and the Southwest what it is today. It is unnecessary to rip his legacy out of the Arroyo, and you should deny that opportunity by in your consideration of the Autry expansion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Our next speaker is back in Van Nuys, Rick Nightingale, and then we'll come back for Matt Dowd here in Chambers.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Rick Nightingale. I didn't know. I was here at the meeting here, and Councilman Smith turned around and did a flim-flam thing on me regarding, he says about my drag strip isn't in his area. Well, you better look at his map because it is. He said it was in somebody else's area, and then he kind of, pushed it off on me. So that wouldn't care. Pretty cool, especially when my house is in his area, too. But let's go back to this housing deal that we've been talking about, this $200 million that we think we're going to get. Jerry Brown was on O'Reilly the other night. Just so happened that the state is still going in bankruptcy type thing, and they want the government to bail them out, that we're $16 billion in the hole. I don't know where they think they're going to get the money for. Like the mayor thinks the state and the federal is going to start giving them money, but I'm sure he thinks that we're going to, that we have all this extra cash that we're going to turn around and put out. And if it's under Wendy, you better clamp down on it if you're going to be in this committee and take care of this situation, because the people aren't going to put up with it. And if you want to run for this new office, you're going to start asking questions regarding them. And I think any council member that votes for this should be replaced. They're not looking out for the people then. You saw what the banks did. They went bankrupt. We're all hurting for that deal. And if you turn around and think that we should support all these things, like right now, immigration right now, the state puts out $11 billion. And then we turn around as the city of Los Angeles, how much are we putting up? Because we're a sanctuary city, that we think that we should support all these people. So there's more money being put out for these people. So then I don't want to say they're all the ones that's the cause of it, but they're pretty much too. But you do have the poor and so forth. I realize you should help them, not adopt them. There was supposed to be that, if somebody comes around and you help them out once in a while and that, but you don't adopt them and support them for the rest of their lives. And I think if you turn around with the mayor and if you don't straighten him out and say you're not going to vote for this, you people need to be replaced. We need a new regime that's going to back the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt Dowd is our last speaker for general public comment. Mr. Dowd.
Yeah, thank you, Los Angeles, Channel 35. Had to come down and see the Zuma Dog show live. But make sure you check them out Friday. That's like an activist thing happening in East LA. And I think it's Friday night and Saturday morning, 7 p.m., the Zuma Dog karaoke and political review. So anyway, I'm Matt Dowd. I just got a letter from Rocky Delgadildo. Please be advised that a criminal complaint, Mr. City Attorney.
As it says right there, if we could hold his time, personal, impertinent, unduly repetitive, slanderous, or profane remarks are prohibited. Could you please not make remarks that will disrupt the meeting? That'll be your last warning. Thank you.
It's kind of a comment on the performance, if you'll let me finish my comment. Anyway, please be advised that a criminal complaint has been filed charging you with a violation of Section 4215 G2B, commonly known as placing item exceeding 4 feet tall on the ground. So, the good times are over, Channel 35, the countries, it's over. The government has wrecked it all. They're just digging the hole deeper. There's a $700 billion bailout because the federal government took its eye off the ball for a long time. The Federal Reserve, Zuma Dog predicted it though. A year ago, if you had stocks this weekend, then you went against Zuma Dog and you probably paid. And there's multiple homicide, suicide over this whole fiscal crisis. So the point is the city of Los Angeles needs to get its shop back together and stop just raising fees. You need to cut costs, stop these fee waivers. There's a whole manner of these $40,000 prosecutions for Hannah Montana. You're prosecuting me for a Hannah Montana cardboard cutout. I'll be a criminal for Hannah Montana. Thank you, Hannah Montana. See, the federal government hasn't even bailed out the firemen from 9/11 yet who need compensation. How about those guys?
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. That'll close our general public comment. We have the ordinances 6 through 8 and 10. We have 12 members now. If we can please open the roll on those, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, those are approved. I believe Ms. Hahn wanted to take up next item 16. So if we can take up item 16 without objection, we'll do that next. And I'd like to call on Ms. Hahn as our first speaker. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, today, item 16 is an item where we're going to be focusing on the issue of water, which we know is nearing a crisis across this country, but certainly in this area. And it's interesting. I mean, today's a good example. Most experts say that the rainy season in LA is usually through October through April. And yet you walk out today, and it's going to be over 80 degrees in Los Angeles. There's not a drop of rain in sight. And because of this very dry weather, we need to be reminded constantly that we are indeed experiencing a water shortage. My staff has worked with Council members Garcetti and Perry to bring forward today a presentation by experts, by city departments, to better understand and discuss water shortage, the water shortage that we face in the near future. As in the rest of the world, significant water problems exist in the southwestern states because of severe drought, urban development, agricultural uses, and population growth. The overwhelming need to solve these issues in the United States and the world is crucial through education and certainly through our own planning. As all of us are aware, water transformed this landscape into the vibrant region that it is today. But our region's water supplies have never been so challenged, and we all share the responsibility of ensuring that we have a reliable and high-quality water supply. Today, we're not only going to be hearing more about the water crisis from experts, our own DWP, Bureau of Sanitation, and the Metropolitan Water District. We'll also be hearing about some possible short-term and long-term solutions. I plan to today introduce 5 motions that will help address some of the concerns and hopefully create solutions for this water shortage. I'm going to be asking DWP to work closely with Dunn and our neighborhood councils to conduct outreach and education with our neighborhood councils about the shortage and take steps that we can all learn to take to conserve. I'm also going to ask DWP to work with LAUSD on a similar kind of an educational campaign with all the kids who are growing up in Los Angeles. We know that Orange County has had a great success in implementing a recycled water program through effective marketing and outreach. And I'm going to be asking the DWP and the Bureau of Sanitation to invite Orange County representatives to share the information during a meeting of our Energy and Environment Committee so we can learn from best practices how they made that program work. In order to encourage purple pipe programs in new developments, I'm asking for a way to require a dual pipe system in all new developments in Los Angeles. Currently, this is encouraged, but it's not required. And I want to look at the possibility of charging a water fee similar to our Quimby fees for new development to encourage recycling in new developments. I've been pushing a long time for a purple pipe recycling program to serve our local refineries in the harbor area. And one of the motions I will be asking today is requesting a report back on the status of that program with our refineries. And finally, I'm going to be calling on the Department of Public Works to report on current technologies like permeable surfaces which can be established in the city. I think at the end of today, we're all going to realize that the water shortage is a real problem in Los Angeles, And it's my hope today that this meeting will help educate us, and more importantly, though, really inspire us as the policymakers here in Los Angeles to plan for the future and make sure that we are doing all that we can to protect the people that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Garcetti, Mr. Labange, Ms. Perry, you want to speak before the presentation?
I just wanted to, Ms. Hahn asked me to cue a couple things up and to hand it back to her, so I'll leave it in her hands in terms of whether then we have the wider conversation. But I want to thank her and also for Ms. Perry, who have both been focused. This entire council has been on water for some time, but this comes out another one of our single topic days that really focuses on the big issues that Angelenos face. And I want to thank Ms. Hahn because it was really her brainchild to say we need a day on water. And it's something that happened when we were in the midst of drought. We're still not out of that drought, nor do we think with the projected growth, which has nothing to do with building anything new. When we didn't build things, we still had 1 million more people come to Los Angeles because of a young population. 2/3 of our growth is actually people not migrating here from another state or another country, but a young population that will have children. But they will depend on water being the very essence of their survival here. I want to thank Ms. Perry, too, for her leadership as chair of our Energy and Environment Committee. It's one of the perversions of California that anything that falls in terms of rainwater in the northern half of the state, or at least north from us, we've engineered to quickly come down to Los Angeles as fast as possible. And yet every bit of rainwater that drops in the basin in Los Angeles, we've engineered to wash out to the ocean without ever recharging our aquifers and cleaning it up and using it. Currently, Los Angeles consumes about 650,000 acre-feet of water a year. And this has remained constant for the last 25 years, despite our growth of adding 1 million people. We've heard this a lot, but it's been the good policies of this city that have literally been able to accommodate 1 million more people with the same amount of water, which gives you an idea of how much water we are wasting. The low flush toilet, energy efficient appliances, etc., those things that we have required in all homes have helped sustain life here at the same time that we've been able to keep within our resources. But such changes will not be enough. Ms. Hahn is really queuing up for this council, and Ms. Perry has been saying this in committee, that if we don't do what the last incarnation of council members did a generation ago, now, for this next generation, we will not be providing the leadership that is necessary to sustain life here in Los Angeles. We have threatened water supplies, reduced snowpacks in the eastern Sierra, increased demand from the Colorado River, and global warming is actually filling our snowflakes literally with more air in them and less water, so that when we do get the snowpacks melting, there's less water contained per volume. Our work today is to listen and to learn from the experts. An award-winning documentarian, the Metropolitan Water District, responsible for at least part of the supply for 18 million Southwest United States water users, and our own experts here at Department of Water and Power and Sanitation, to paint a picture on this issue and how are we responding to it. One last thing, colleagues. I recently saw a poll that asked Angelenos about what issues are most important to them, and there's always the 3 or 4 tied at the top, which is transportation/traffic, gang violence, and public safety. But in an environment, which was also right up there too, the environment, when asked about water quality, air quality, open space, global warming, and water conservation, the number one issue for Angelenos in all the environmental issues was water conservation. This is on the minds of our voters, this is on the minds of our constituents, this is on the minds of our businesses, and it is critical to our economy, to our housing, to the strength of Los Angeles for us to take bold action and to continue that mantle of leadership which Los Angeles has earned in the past. But what have we done for the people of Los Angeles lately? That's what today is about. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Hahn to introduce our first speaker, or Ms. Perry first, and then back to Ms. Hahn. Ms. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Garcetti. I just wanted to say a few quick words before we get started, because I hope that this will be a part of our presentation today. We have a body of motions pertaining to gray water and recycled water, which has been introduced into council in the last year or so. I'm hoping that we can use the committee as a way to create the framework to move these motions through as a body of work to increase efficiency in water usage in the future, and incorporate in that discussion the impact on rate changes. Hopefully we can discuss that in some detail today, and to make sure that as we're developing these long-term strategies for water conservation, that they do include strategies for gray water and recycled water, not only within our government facilities, but citywide. So I just wanted to say thank you to not only all the departments, but to MWD, who pushed this effort to be much more high profile in educating and outreaching to the public on the issue of water conservation, and look forward to participating in this today.
Mr. Labange.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. I asked that if anybody behind the screen wants to see this, to sit on the left side. There's a technical glitch with the system that we use that projects up there. That's correct there, Jim? Okay, so I just wanted to say that, so I don't want anybody to be behind the screen. But I also want to say it is about water and relationships. This city was founded on water. All water is recycled. All water is recycled. It rains. It's just what we learned in grade school the same way. So there's some challenges. The one big question I want to ask later on, but I'll ask you now, Jim, so you write it down, is how we could have real-time information for people who use the system. This morning I did 2 loads of laundry, and I said, I wonder if there's a computer, which I'm not that savvy on, that would pull up to me to let me know where I am in this period right now, real time. Just a thought, Jim. Anyway, Ms. Hahn, thank you for your leadership on putting this together, because it's so important. I think the President of the City Council could see as a strong supporter of reclaimed water and recycled water and Purple Pipe, because of that nice look you got today, Wendy, as well. Purple Pipe, Jim, I know I got a report from you. We got to push it more, because there is water out there that we got to reclaim and reuse. And I also want to make it available for sanitation, because I'm also about clean streets. And because we can't use water unwisely, purple water or purple pipe water you could use to help clean debris off the streets, because there's nothing that upsets the people of Los Angeles more than dirty streets, and they feel that nobody cares. A lot to be heard, and I'm anxious to hear it, so I'll turn it back to Ms. Janice Hahn.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Before Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Rosenwald have pushed the button, do you want to wait till after the presentation or speak before the presentation? After?
Before the presentation, I just want to emphasize to the people who maybe are wondering, why is the City Council talking about water? Water is such a simple thing. What's the big deal? I turn my faucet on and it comes out. I want to water my grass and I'm able to water my grass. If I want to take a shower, I'm able to take a shower. What is the big deal? Well, I want Angelenos to understand that this presentation is very important, and it's important for all of us to pay attention, because water is a very, very essential element to any society, to any community. And without water, you don't have a community. Without water, you don't have a town that's sustainable. Without water, you don't have the second largest city in the country sustainable. So it's very important for people to understand that this is a very, very critical issue. It seems like it's something that's not that big a deal, but it is a big deal. And I forget who said it. Some famous guy said that a long time ago. When it comes to the politics and the importance of water, he said something that goes like this: whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. The point is, water is more important than perhaps anything that you might want in your life. We take it for granted. And I'd like to compliment the Department of Water and Power and all the water agencies that feed Southern California the water that we have. They've made it such that most of us take it for granted. And we don't realize that that little saying, it might sound a little awkward, it might even sound dumb, but the moment you turn your tap on and the water doesn't come out, then you're going to be wanting to fight for your water. Let's start doing the right thing now. I want to thank my colleague, Janice Hahn, for bringing this issue forward, and so that the public can hear once again, and hopefully they're listening, how important this issue is to each individual, to each child, to each family, to each business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Back to Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to start our day today with a presentation by a nationally known director, executive producer, and a friend, Jim Tebow. Jim has been involved in productions for a number of outlets, including HBO, ABC News, CBS. Jim is dedicated to providing information, both visual and educational, to the public about a number of issues facing us in the 21st century. But he first caught my attention with his national documentary, Running Dry. It was inspired by a book written by the late Senator Paul Simon called Tapped Out. And through this documentary, Jim has become the voice warning us about our current water shortage, which is why I wanted to invite him here today to kind of kick off our issue about water. We like to call him the Al Gore of San Pedro. We feel like he has that much effect on the water issue as Al Gore did on our climate change issue. This morning we're going to be seeing a piece of his newest work, The American Southwest, Are We Running Dry?, which will be airing this fall, hosted and narrated by Jane Seymour. I think we're all going to find it very, very eye-opening. So please join me in welcoming a man who is passionate about change and is here to share with us information that is vital to the people that we serve. Thank you. Okay, Jim, you're on.
Well, thank you, Janice. Sure.
Why don't you come up here? Please, got water.
Thank you, Janice. President Garcetti, members of the council, it's an honor to be here. I've always looked at Los Angeles as being the flagship in many, many ways for this entire country. I just completed a documentary entitled The American Southwest, Are We Running Dry? The reason I produced this documentary is because I had just finished producing Running Dry about the global water crises, and I presented it all over the world.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
I presented it all over the world in Beijing and South Africa to representatives of the European Union, across this country, to both on two major presentations on Capitol Hill, which, by the way, was the genesis behind the Paul Simon Water for the Poor Act. But one of the things I realized as I was presenting this documentary was the fact that everywhere I went across this country, people look at the water crises in a rather abstract sort of way. When I indicate that every 15 seconds a child dies from a lack of water or water-related diseases, they look at that as, well, that's over there. That has nothing to do with our country. So I thought it was really important for me to bring the global water crises right to our front steps. We have a runaway train coming down the tracks, and people are not aware of it. Our utilities have done such a great job of delivering such a high-quality product to everyone that the American public just takes it for granted. And by the way, those days are going to be over very, very quickly. So at this, I think might be a good idea to show the first 4 minutes, I guess, of the documentary, and then I can maybe make a few comments about what you didn't see.
The only time I think people understand the importance of water is when all of a sudden they don't have it. And I think that as we get into water shortage situations, that's when people will waken up and start understanding the importance of water and the fact that without water there is no quality of life.
Water is not just another substance. It is a precious force that creates and gives life. A profound water crisis is now confronting the Earth. Dramatic signs of the crisis have emerged within the United States. Furthermore, there is no place within the U.S. where the evolving crisis is more evident than in the American Southwest. Within the United States, the subtropical dry zone is expanding northward, and the effect of that expansion will be an increase in frequency and intensity of droughts in the Southwest region. This could cause potential chaos in the 7 states which reside within the Colorado River watershed. The region is experiencing a steady decrease in mountain snowfall, lessening the deep accumulation of Rocky Mountain winter snow, which melts each spring and provides the Colorado River with its vital source of water. Today, the ongoing drought has brought the flow of the Colorado River to its lowest level since measurements began 85 years ago.
The bottom line is there's only so much water in the Colorado River. And I think right now the Colorado River provides water for something like 30 million people. It's really not that big of a river compared to other rivers. The water demands that are projected on the Colorado River are going to outstrip the amount of water supply that we have available in the Colorado River.
And it may be that it's going to lend itself to a big fight sooner than people thought, because there isn't going to be enough Colorado water.
We're in a drought right now in the Southwest, but we've seen worse droughts in the historical record and the instrumental record and the paleoclimate record, droughts that could make current arguments and fights over the Colorado look like nothing.
At a certain point, there's not going to be any more water, and therefore the planning of how to manage the amount that exists for the increasing demand is going to become critically important.
The big users of water are the energy industry and agriculture. And so if the Colorado River flow decreases, which it will during sustained droughts, probably the effect of this stress on the water system will be a change in agricultural and energy practices.
The agriculture community is threatened by climate change and drought.
So we may have created an unsustainable farming culture in some of these arid areas. And those areas in which we developed irrigation for agriculture were based on the assumption that that water would be available long term. It may not be.
Water and energy are also intricately linked. Because of the relentless drought, some speculate the electricity generated from the Hoover Dam could be in jeopardy.
Well, and we didn't anticipate this. We expected those reservoirs to be full. We expected to be able to use hydroelectric power generation as long as the dam stood there. It didn't occur to us that the reservoir would go dry and we wouldn't be able to generate electricity from that water.
A lot of people don't realize how much energy is used. 19% of the electricity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And again, that was just a kind of a teaser on the documentary. But you've been doing this for a long time, and I just thought since we had you here, we might just get your a brief response to what do you actually think could go wrong, or what could really happen if we don't act on what the statistics are telling us, which looks pretty scary.
Well, since I completed this documentary, the Central Intelligence Agency has completed a study regarding international security aspects of the water in humanitarian crises across the world, and they have projected the American Southwest could potentially become a dust bowl. So, we have a very, very serious issue, and the only way we're going to be able to deal with it is for all of us to come together. In the documentary, I advocate federal, state, local government coming together. We don't have a national water policy in this country. We need to establish a national water policy in relationship to environmental planning considerations. The days of us growing without any consideration regarding, urban sprawl and just expanding the urban core, I think those days are over. We're going to have to look at how we build our communities, build our homes. Everything has to change. One of the things in the documentary I advocate is the fact that we need a paradigm shift within the way in our society, the way our just changes of culture, the way we live our lives. I think it's really imperative.
Well, and one of the things we always struggle with is that idea of cooperating with federal government and the state government, and usually we end up saying, think globally but act locally. So Are there things that you would think that we, at the local level, that we have control over, that we should be doing right now?
Well, I think the Department of Water and Power is off to the right steps. We need to reuse. We can no longer just depend on the Colorado River. And in the documentary, I also point out the fact that the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is in desperate straits. And the levees are breaking down. It cannot withstand a major flood or a major earthquake. If that happened, water could be stopped from the north for years. So it's really imperative that it's a time to act. I mean, the state, local government, everyone has to work together to be able to deal with these particular issues. And of course, the most important thing is conservation. You know, conservation is just flat out good economics. And everyone, right down to each individual living in the community, has to participate in this issue because, believe me, this is a crisis that's right on. We're about to be, submerged in this incredible crisis.
And I think that's something that I think we're all going to really come to grapple with during this day of water. We've got a lot of voluntary measures in place. We have a few things that are mandatory, but I'm wondering if it might be time for us to move towards, mandatory conservation.
Well, I think pricing, I think you hinted about, pricing. I think pricing, again, it's an economic consideration that people realize, that how precious water is. I was flying over from Albuquerque not too long ago and flying over Los Angeles, and I noticed how many swimming pools we have.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of the things I talk about in the documentary is the fact that we do have third world conditions right here in the American Southwest, and I filmed on the Hopi and Navajo Indian reservation where they live maybe on 25 gallons per day, where most American citizens go anywhere from 100 to 200 gallons a day. And I just begin to wonder, how many swimming pools are on the Navajo Indian reservation. But the fact is, we're going to have to change our lives. We're going to have to think differently about how we will, progress into the future. And little things. We need to program ourselves on how we, in terms of watering our lawns, washing our cars, even down to turning off the water when we brush our teeth. I mean, everything. We have to change the way we live our lives.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I know you've given every council member has a copy of the documentary, which we can watch in full.
One additional thing. The documentary is going to be broadcast on KCET on the 23rd of October at 8:30 in the evening.
Good, because I think this is all about educating the masses and warning the masses. I just feel like at some point we have all the statistics, we have all the numbers, and then it's going to be up to those of us who are policymakers to act to make a difference.
Janice, I really feel strongly the fact that the United States has an opportunity. We have a major crisis in the American Southwest, but we have an opportunity here to set an example for the world. And if we can solve a problem here, we can solve the global water crises. All the complexities, all the problems right here, they're all here where they are taking place in other parts of the world. We have a golden opportunity, to turn a lemon into a lemonade.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you being here and kind of giving us the framework of how we might be discussing and debating today these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, as we look at the economy and the insanity going on in the earth, this is as big, if not bigger. It is the number one issue we all need to focus on. Just a couple of general comments I'd like to make. First of all, I used to do a series of shows on the politics of water when I did television. I must have done 50 shows. The bottom line is the state needs to get with agriculture and talk about two things. As you know, the Pacific Institute just came out with a study, and two things they recommend clearly is first the conservation of the water that farmers use. better tiling, better use and capture of water, not the incredible waste that farmers do with waters. Secondly, farmers in our Great Valley, the breadbasket of the nation, should no longer do rice and cotton. You do that in wetland areas like North Carolina, South Carolina, in the areas on the East Coast. You don't do those kinds of crops in an area where water is scarce. If we got the farmers on board and stopped the politics of farmers, we the people outnumber those farms. We want them to be the crops of the planet, but not rice, not cotton, and more conservation when they get the water. We would get a dramatic increase in water for urban areas. The second thing we need to do right away, and no more talk about it, Governor, is the Delta. We got to deal with the Delta. We have to deal with the dams up there. We have to deal with the fish up there. We have to deal with the reality that that waterway coming in is a significant waterway. Just go up the 5 and you see the aqueducts. I mean, if we don't get a handle on the Delta, I don't want to hear any more talk. It's not just the Katrina aspect. It's the shutting down of our water source to Southern California. So for God's sake, I say to every elected official, when you get back up there, deal with the Delta, okay? And then there are a few other things, obviously. We had a meeting in my district. I'm so proud of my constituents in Brentwood and the Palisades on the streams. We are making a map, and I put that motion in, colleagues, to map our city with the veins, which are the streams, and map them in such a way that all of our land use policy going forward sees the stream, not something to cover up and put a pipe in so you can build a mansion, but a stream is a stream, which is part of the process of the aquifers getting filled, part of the process of my friend Ed Reyes's LA River thing. They're all connected, the streams. And if we do not allow the developer to build over the stream and get rid of the stream, but appreciate the stream and build according to the appreciation of the veins of the water thing, we'll do a great thing. The next thing we need to do, and I'm in the middle of this with Charnock Wells in my Mar Vista area. What we have is Santa Monica taking a straw into the dirt of LA and sucking the aquifer water out to take care of their community. Well, I have real problems with our city in the 30s giving them the right to take our water. But more importantly, I want to make sure that every street we build going forward has that porous ability so that the water goes through the street, through the alley, through these new technologies back into the aquifer. I no longer want to see it rush into the ocean. And continue to be insane. And so we're working on that. I mean, there's a lot of great things we're going to hear from our technical people of how we're moving forward with that, including the solar panels, which is another energy saver. It's all connected in those energies. So I just want to say that we all know climate change is real. We've seen the acceleration. The scientists just met again 2 weeks ago, and they said the acceleration is even far greater than what they had projected in the worst case. And then I pick up the paper this morning, and I see a quarter of our animals are threatened with extinction. So we add this all up, and we're moving in the right direction. I'm very happy we're doing this as a council to give it some focus today, and that we continue to move in the direction that I know this has been the most progressive council in the city's history dealing with these issues. And thank you for the awareness and putting a video together.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I agree with everything you're talking about. And we're talking about runoff. The global climate change, the river is 2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it's ever been recorded, and the implications associated with infectious diseases could be very profound. We could have outbreaks of all kinds of diseases because of the changes that are taking place.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I appreciate your thought in terms of how we need to do a paradigm shift in our land use patterns and our planning. But I wanted to ask you, many times when we use the word density and folks talk about density, they refer to it as a bad word. It's something that some might feel is a way to stick a political club over someone's head because you're promoting density. But when it comes to the issue of water and how we look at best management practices dealing with water. In presenting your documentary, what has been the reaction to that whole notion of density? Have you had any feedback in that regard?
Well, I've just been rolling it out right now, but I agree with you. You know, we need I have a degree in landscape architecture. I was an environmental planner before I got into this crazy business of being a producer. And, I mean, there's really a necessity for urban planning, urban design, both thinking regionally but designing locally. We can no longer afford to expand as far as we want to. And I think it really have to be very cognizant of the planning process. And I think urban planners have to really become really serious. You know, we have this association that was SCAG, associated with Southern California governments, and I'm very familiar with it. In fact, I was very involved with the Puget Sound Council of Governments in Seattle. I'm very familiar with the Association of Bay Area Governments. We need to start paying attention to what these studies. We can no longer just let them advocate studies and let them go off into oblivion. We really need to put teeth in terms of planning, the planning process. It's really imperative.
And I appreciate that because sometimes it's not politically popular to use certain terms or to phrase certain thoughts a certain way because it triggers these very emotional reactions from many folks who are still in that not in my backyard mindset. But we really don't have many alternatives but to think differently. Some people call smart growth dumb growth. Some folks say, why do you keep intensifying buildings when you're bringing more people in when we already have them here? When we already have pockets at 70,000 people per square mile in the city, in my district. Around the river we have 30,000 per square mile. Individuals, 30,000 people per square mile. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm hoping in this dialogue we could change the culture of some of our departments and how we work together and how we stimulate a smarter use of our space. So I appreciate everything you've said. Thank you very much.
You know, these environmental issues can bring people together. Water can be a bridge to peace, and it's really important we do it. And I also think that the word green has become kind of a cliche, but yet it's good economics. We can put people to work. We need to think in terms of the appliances we have. Getting involved in alternative energy. I mean, these are incentives that we should really implement in our society.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We are next going to invite two other folks forward and want to thank you very much for your contributions today. Jeff Keitlinger, if you'd like to come forward from the Metropolitan Water District. We also have Gary Tobin from the Chamber of Commerce. You'd both like to come forward, and Jim, feel free to stay there, or to, if you want to sit in the pews for a little bit too, or if you need to move on, either way. But I think our next presentation is going to be from NWD, and we'll hear a little bit from the Chamber of Commerce as well. So, actually, I think we might be a little bit short, Jim. So if you don't mind going to the pew right now over there, and we'll get Gary to come on over. Or I guess there's a fourth chair there. Okay, that's all right. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Steve Arakawa. I'm here representing Jeff Keitlinger, our general manager from the Metropolitan Water District, and I'm very pleased to be here and to participate in the session this morning. What I'm about to do is to go through a presentation that will take about 5 minutes or so, and to give you some context for what is going on in the state and within our region that Metropolitan serves on water supply, and to try to communicate to you that things are changing. Things are changing with more than just drought. We're facing a number of different challenges that we're going to need to work with and solve over the next few years. Metropolitan Water District is a water wholesale agency. We import water, and for many of you, you probably know that Colorado River water supply is a significant source to Southern California. Metropolitan developed and operates the Colorado River Aqueduct for Southern California water supply. We have 26 customers, and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is one of those customers. But we have other water agencies that are customers as well, all the way down to San Diego and into Riverside County, including Orange County and Ventura. We have a 37-member board of directors, and we meet about half of the retail water demands in Southern California on the South Coastal Plain. So Metropolitan serves water to water agencies, does not sell to retail customers. Metropolitan Water District serves the South Coast region with water supply, but we get our water from a number of different sources. In the early 1900s, Metropolitan did not exist. The city of LA was growing, and there were local supplies that Los Angeles depended upon, groundwater supplies. And as the city outstripped that, they looked to the Eastern Sierras for additional water supplies. So the LA Aqueduct was developed and later enhanced. Over time, as the region grew, the Colorado River Aqueduct was built in the 1930s. And further, after World War II, the State Water Project that many of you have seen from the air or driven along I-5, you've seen water supply being delivered from Northern California through the State Water Project. And Metropolitan contracts for water from the State Water Project. So we get our water from multiple sources, but the story of where we get our water is a full circle because we are looking to manage our increased need for water in the future by looking inward to our local area, and that is conservation, groundwater management, recycled water. The reason that we face multiple challenges is more than just drought. We have had drought, second consecutive dry year up in Northern California, which affects our State Water Project supplies from the Delta. But also the Colorado River has had a significant drought over the last 8 years, and that has affected storage on that system. In Southern California, we've had the driest March through May. And when it's dry in Southern California, that increases the demand for water, and that affects the whole water picture. But beyond that, our water systems are facing more and more challenges because of fishery conflicts with water supply and how to manage through that. So there have been water cutbacks that have been ordered by courts in order to deal with these environmental issues. So both in 2007 and in 2008, those types of conditions have affected our water supply. And in fact, in 2008, the second year of such challenge, we have been impacted significantly by the court's reduction of water supply from the State Water Project. 500,000 acre feet. Keep in mind that the city of LA uses over 700,000 acre feet, so 500,000 acre feet is a significant amount of water as compared to what the demand is in the city of LA. And that has been a reduction to the State Water Project as a result of these fishery reductions. So the Los Angeles Aqueduct has been impacted by dry conditions. We've had local dry conditions. And we've had a number of fishery challenges in the Delta where we get our state project water. Now, the actions that have been taken to deal with that are we've had to cut water supply delivery for groundwater replenishment. So groundwater replenishment is available to add to our groundwater basins in years where it's wet and there's plenty of supply, but when it's dry and there's not enough water to go around, we need to cut that supply. The same for agricultural water use in our own service area. We do have some agriculture in various parts, including Ventura County and San Diego and Riverside County, and we had to cut 30% to those customers this past year. Earlier this year, the Metropolitan Board adopted a water supply allocation plan. They've not implemented it yet, but they wanted to be prepared in case 2009 shapes up as another significant dry condition. And we've been reducing our storage that has been built up for a number of years as we weather through this. Now, I'm going to focus on what is the key challenge that we're facing within the state on the State Water Project. East of San Francisco, we have the Delta system. So if you follow the San Francisco Bay and you go upstream, you will find the Sacramento River and the San Joaquin River, and they converge in an area called the Delta. And there's a whole network of rivers and streams that come together in that area. Our water comes from that area, both from the Sacramento River and from the San Joaquin River. The Great Central Valley that extends several hundred miles from north to south is drained by these two rivers, going from north to south on the Sacramento River and from south to north on the San Joaquin River. Both of those rivers drain into the San Francisco Bay. We receive our water from the state project at the south end of that delta, labeled here on the diagram, the State Water Project pumps and the Central Valley Project pumps. That's where we receive our water. Now, the pathway for our water is the delta. Our water moves from the north end of the delta to the south end of the delta. And the key thing that we have been addressing and dealing with is the fact that it's right in the middle of a fish nursery area. The fish spawn in that area, they rear in that area, and to the effect that the water projects impact that area, the court has determined that cutbacks are required. In addition to a number of fish that have become of concern that are listed on the Endangered Species Act, the delta is challenged by a couple of other key challenges. One is seismic. It has a number of different seismic faults that run through that area, both in the Bay Area and within the delta, and also it's a flood risk because of the fragile levees that protect that water supply moving through the delta. Now, as a result of weathering through these cutbacks, our storage reserves in Southern California have dropped in the last couple of years. Starting in early 2007, we have utilized that storage to the point where in early 2009, we will have about enough storage to weather through a very significant dry year if we have it in 2009. We've also reserved a good amount of storage, about 670,000 acre feet, for emergency purposes that is not used for any purposes other than if we have an earthquake that affects the aqueduct systems or other catastrophes. In addition, the state reservoirs are reaching very low points, including our source water from the state project up in Northern California, which is approaching 1977 levels. So the actions that are being taken to deal with that are to manage our storage programs, to be involved in the delta issues, which are front and center of the state's agenda right now on water supply, to deal with the near-term improvements that are necessary in the delta system to make things work, and also to deal with some of the longer-term issues. Conservation outreach is very key to Southern California. To educate our residents about the importance of water and the need to reduce water now is urgently needed. And also over the next 5 years, trying to establish new ways to develop supply and conservation, including the activities of the City of Los Angeles to develop recycled water. Now, the state is involved in a planning process to deal with the delta, and they're dealing with it on many fronts. One of the key things that they are focused on is where to take that water from the delta, rather than taking it right in the middle of the nursery area of the delta fish, to look to take that water from just north of the delta area so that it does not interrupt or affect the fish in a negative way. And so that is a key focus that the fish agencies and the water export interests and others are looking at to try to develop long-term solutions. The reason that this is important is that it will reestablish habitat conditions in the delta and hopefully bring back those native fish. So we're in the middle of looking at both the near-term and long-term actions, particularly for the long-term, the next 25 to 50 years. We have just launched our planning process where we're going out and speaking to different stakeholders and getting their ideas on what should be considered in the future of our water supply planning. It's called our IRP, Integrated Resources Plan, and we're going to be developing that plan over the next year, involving all of our customers and all of our stakeholders. And critical to that will be how do we deal with things like conservation, and enhancing the level of conservation, enhancing the use of recycled water, and looking at how we can put our stormwater runoff to better use. Those are all going to be important elements of that long-term plan. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Do you want to speak now, Ms. Gruhl, and then Mr. Labange, and then we'll go from there?
Thank you. And I just wanted to particularly highlight the issue with the Delta, because Mr. Rosendahl and I introduced a motion this July talking about what we could do as a city, and particularly in state legislation, to help address some of the concerns that we have in the Delta and the water quality as well, and state legislation. Could you give us a kind of an update on where we are and the state legislation on this issue?
Sure. There's one item that I think is of immediate importance, and that is a bill that was just passed and signed by the governor, SB 1XX by Parada, and that provides over $800 million that deals with water supply, water projects. And a good portion of that is to deal with the Delta, the levees, the emergency preparedness, so that we are able to react to an earthquake in the Delta and still maintain our water supply. But also, it includes a good amount of money, over $500 million for local projects and other types of water management actions. And that will be important to our service area as we try to develop further recycled water, groundwater treatment, water conservation. So in the near term, being able to access that funding due to SB 1XX is important. In the longer term, there were discussions on a water bond that have occurred over the last couple of years. They were not able to push that forward in the past year, but it is anticipated that that will be work that will continue on into 2009 in anticipation of a 2010 election. And so that will be another piece of legislation to watch.
On that area, okay. Because I think, and has been expressed by everyone here, there is finally a recognition, and I think the MWD and DWP and a lot of others that have all been talking about the importance of this and the potential crisis that we are facing. We talk about a financial crisis in this country. I mean, we're facing a water crisis, and our ability to provide that to the people of Los Angeles and to this region. And that's why, and I want to thank Ms. Hahn as well for her leadership in bringing this forward, because we oftentimes get it in little bits and pieces on one action or another, and I think our intent here today is really to look at how we have a comprehensive approach to looking at our water challenges and how our decisions can impact the ability to have the water here and the safety of our water. So I just want to thank MWD for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. Mr. Labange is next.
I just wanted to thank the MWD. Los Angeles, I think, originally wanted to try to build the Colorado Aqueduct, but we didn't have the money to build it, so we arranged partnership with the other charter cities, if that's correct history, I think.
That is the correct history.
On that. So it tells you about Los Angeles and reaching out and these other cities that were members. And then the relationship, which I don't think all of us do, but I think, Mr. Cardenas, some months, if not years ago, you gave a very detailed expression about the relationship between the water in the Colorado and Arizona and everything, which, you know, we have an understanding, but not as deep as you do. The key is to inform everybody about this, because it's been a half, three-quarters of a century on that. I know you have a good public affairs outreach program at the MWD. The issues are, I think, you have to educate people on that all water is recycled, wherever it comes from, wherever it comes from, it is recycled, and what we have to do. But I did want to take it, I know Mr. Rosendahl spoke a little about the farmers there. There's a relationship there. Where the water flows, the food grows. And I know the Central Valley is very proud of what they do for not just California, but for around the world when it comes to what is your relationship with the Central Valley? When I say that, meaning MWD.
Thank you for that question. The Central Valley includes a number of water agencies and water users that are also contractors for State Project Water. And so we work with them when it deals with the Delta and what our interests are. Historically, there have been water transfers in the Central Valley from willing sellers in the Central Valley to willing buyers like ourselves during times like this when there's a need for water. And we see that as not only an existing opportunity but a growing future opportunity because it makes sense for both ends when you're dealing with certain types of situations like we're in today. It's economically beneficial to them to get investment from areas like ourselves to improve their systems, and we get water supply in years where we really need it. And that is building upon other things that we've done on the Colorado River to also help agricultural areas become more efficient and take the benefit of water supply to add to our regional reliability.
Right, and I think in the last crisis, let's say in the 60s, what did Los Angeles do? They went on and built the second Los Angeles aqueduct in the 70s, if that's correct. We can't necessarily build another aqueduct because there's no more water necessarily out there. We've got to use our water smarter because water is being distributed in different ways. I will think it's real important on our relationships. I know we had a situation with the Bureau of Sanitation with the Kern County and a relationship we had there on some things that it's about those relationships that are so key. I want to know a little more about those relationships. What is Metropolitan? I know on the power side it's PG&E and it's Edison and MUD and some of the others up north, San Francisco. What's north of Metropolitan?
North of Metropolitan, we have some agencies like Kern County Water Agency, Tulare Lake Basin Water Storage District, and there are a number of others, but Kern County Water Agency being the biggest. And that's the Bakersfield area. And we have been working with them a number of years because they have a huge groundwater basin. And there is an ability for us to store wet year water in that basin and retrieve it in dry years. And in return, we help invest in facilities in their area, and we're able to park and store our water so that we're able to add to our increased reliability. So we have those kinds of relationships.
Right. Well, I'm proud of the farmers because it's where the food grows. I mean, in 1960, agriculture was still the number one industry in Southern California. 1960, it had changed. And when I was in your district on Sunday, Mr. Rosendahl, I reminisced on seeing some of the farm fields in West Los Angeles. All that is up north. It's real important. We don't have food, we can't feed the people. We don't have water, we can't feed anybody. It's water and relationships. So I just wanted to articulate and answer those questions. The work we've got to do. I know the gentleman is going to speak next, Mr. Tobin from the Chamber of Commerce, very interested for the advocacy. And we have to bring this down to the neighborhood levels so they understand this, which I think they do, but we got to really tell them how serious a crisis it is. I love water.
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. I believe you're next for your presentation, Mr. Tobin. Oh, Ms. Hahn. I'm sorry. We have Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Reyes, Ms. Hahn, and then Mr. Tobin.
Yeah, just a real quick shout out first to Gary Tobin. Thank you for being here, because obviously the business community has to have water as well as the people have to have it. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say, and I know you're going to say some good things. Just want to ask you a question. You heard my comments in the very beginning there. What are we doing with the Sacramento legislative group to focus on the farmers that are wasting the water and crops that make no sense? Is there legislation moving in that direction? Do we have leadership up there that we need to give the boost to? I'd love to hear that.
There was a bill, if I may respond, there was a bill this past year. It was the AB 2175. It was on water conservation. And that bill dealt with both agricultural conservation and urban conservation. And in that process, Metropolitan was looking out for its interests on urban water conservation, but also it was taking a position that there needs to be equitable actions on the agricultural side as we look to the governor's goal of reducing water use by 20%, there needs to be adequate focus on water use and efficiency in the agricultural side, and the Metropolitan Board took that position while that legislation was alive. Now, that legislation did not go forward, but we anticipate, we know it's likely that will surface again.
It's critical. It is a no-brainer for a guy like me to say, I know some super rich people who a bunch of years ago bought water rights just to make a buck. And that's outrageous that you buy water rights from farmers. The farmers have water rights when they need it for crops that we, the people, want to see produced. So we've had enough talk. We've reached the era where talk is cheap, action is the only thing we can take when it comes to the need for water. So whatever we need to do as a city to give the oomph to a piece of legislation, I wouldn't mind you tooling it and telling us, you know, they pay like a penny for a gallon, we pay $1. I mean, the outrageous difference in the pricing of water. Of course I want crops, but I don't want cotton anymore, and I don't want, rice anymore in that plain that does not have the ecology for that. And I don't want the wasteful non-tiling conservation that hasn't taken place. I'm tired. I don't want to hear it anymore. And what I would love to see is if you could help us tool some legislation that will get our delegation from the urban areas, the assembly members and the state senators, to carry that legislation up there next session. I'd like to do it next session. And I'd like to put all of our urban energy, the 25 million of us in this microcosm from Santa Barbara to San Diego, behind it. You guys are the most powerful water group in America. And we need to go forward with that. No more politics of water. I've had it. Okay? So please help us in putting that legislation together and help us move forward with this. I know Mr. Tobin's going to talk about conservation, but we also need fairness with that water. And I'm tired of letting this farm notion, which is BS, when you're talking about rice and cotton and you're talking about waste. So do we get a commitment that you'll help us pull legislation?
We will definitely work with you, yes.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. For the first time, Mr. Alarcon, for the first time. Yeah, and then we'll go to Mr. Reyes and Ms. Hahn.
Good morning. I have an interesting question, but I think it's pertinent. I'm hearing more and more and seeing in the news stories about, particularly coming out of Arizona, where the people are painting their lawns green, and or their front yards green. And I was just talking to Mr. Cardenas about all the properties in our districts that are going without watering. They're just simply not watering their front lawns, and they look horrendous. And they're in the middle of nice neighborhoods, and then there'll be 1 or 2, possibly 3 houses that have just gone barren. And so, first of all, is this safe? I don't know if you know if you're the right people to answer this, but number one, is it safe to I don't know what kind of paint they're using? And number two, would it be an effective thing for the city of Los Angeles to market, to encourage people to paint as a way to save water? And what other considerations we might take as to this quirky little thing that has emerged apparently out of Arizona. It's happening in many properties in Arizona, and it's beginning to be marketed here in Los Angeles. So I think that's something we should know about.
Well, certainly in Arizona, and particularly in Tucson, there for many years have dealt with very tight water supply situations. And if you go down there, you won't see the kind of landscape you see in Southern California. We're beginning
to see it.
Pardon me?
We're beginning to see it.
We have been working, Metropolitan Water District has been working with its agencies, its members, to get people to understand that they can reduce the amount of grass or turf that they use in their landscape and add to that more native plants and drought-tolerant plants. They don't need to completely get rid of their landscape. They don't need to completely eliminate watering their landscape. But what they can do is...
No, but I'm specifically asking about this green, the painting of the yards. I mean, that can cover a lot of ground and reduce the water need tremendously.
Yes.
But is it safe? I don't.
Yeah, and I think that we don't really know the complete answer to that, whether the paint that's being used is safe or even if it's good for runoff. Because when it rains, you have runoff that comes
Well, but
off.
I don't want to make any assumptions. If you don't know about it, then can you come back and give us
Absolutely.
analyzed information about it rather than just anecdotal or off the cuff? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it may be something. It's certainly something that's buzzing in the news. I see a story about it at least once a week for the last several weeks, and I think it's something we need to seriously explore.
Yeah, that is certainly something we can come back to you with additional information.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Of all the riverways and right-of-ways that you control or influence, how much of that in percentage terms are in urban areas, you might say?
Much of the area almost the whole service area that we cover is urban area. There is some agricultural area down in the North San Diego County, and there's some agricultural area in the Ventura County, but the majority of our service area is urban.
So when you look at the land that you influence or control, or the juxtaposition of your entitlements and your land, which the water travels through, do you have an influence of how the neighboring properties can evolve?
We do. Obviously we serve our water to other water agencies, and what we try to do is influence how they carry about their business. So, for example, we incentivize projects and actions through funding for recycled water, for example. We try to help with the funding for infrastructure to distribute that recycled water out to the areas where it's of need. We also incentivize water conservation actions. So the things that you've heard about earlier about high-efficiency toilet retrofits, high-efficiency washers, clothes washers, things like that, we work through our member agencies to get those kinds of projects and those kinds of savings done within that urban expanse that you were referring to.
So when you look at this notion of multiple purpose, multiple benefits in one site, it is possible to start looking at, for example, wishful thinking. When you work with different municipalities and you look at their land use patterns and you see their zoning entitlements, could we introduce concepts that allow cities to actually start looking at the underground potential, the subsurface of the property, so they can stimulate new opportunities for storage, for water filtering, for capturing the urban slobber through stormwater harvesting technologies? Is that something that you have the ability to, I don't want to say impose, but to strongly recommend to some of the smaller cities around the region, given how much territory you cover?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. As we develop our water plan for the next 25 years, those kinds of things are coming up when we go out and meet with different stakeholders, the municipalities, the other businesses, water users, and when talking about how to manage water, how to manage runoff, those kinds of land use issues are coming up. Metropolitan does play a role in that because it can include those kinds of actions in its plan, and then we implement that through the means that we have, through our incentives and through our recommendations that we make to other decision makers.
How much of an area do you cover at all, Los Angeles, City of LA proper, or is it mostly Department of Water and Power?
Our water, we provide service to the whole area that includes the city of Los Angeles, so our customer is the LA DWP in the LA service area.
Oh, I see. So it puts it into context.
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking forward to working with you to see how this plan that you're putting together. I currently chair the Land Use Committee, so in that context, as we go through specific plans, the River Master Plan, the Overlay District, what incentives might be there, I'd love to hear more about, but also look at what's happening throughout the world in different cities that have already put in place these types of features out of necessity.
Yes.
And it's like we're barely coming around to it, but something that I think would be healthy for our land use patterns as we reassess through the community plans, the general plan process. And therein, I believe, lies an opportunity to do that on a much greater scale and not just along the river corridor. So I look forward to what literature or plans you might have currently. Do you have anything in place?
We're just beginning to reach out to to the communities, to the stakeholders on what our plan should include, and when we get to a point where we've assembled that and brought it to our board, that type of information can be provided.
And what's the time frame?
We're looking to complete our plan in about a year from now, but we will be bringing back strategies to our board in early 2009.
Okay, hopefully most of us will still be here, but look forward to working with you.
We're working very hard at it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Ivy? Yes.
Yes, thank you. One thing I'd like to add to this, my name is Gilbert Ivy. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Metropolitan Water District, and the key that really needs to be underscored here, and you've heard it and you said it, and Mr. Thiebaud's talked about it. A lot of folks from DWP will tell you about specifics here in the city, what you can do about the water supply, but the foundational issues that are facing Southern California, Central California, is the Bay Delta issue. That absolutely is the issue. I had the privilege and honor taking Councilmember Perry and Councilmember Hahn on a trip up to the Delta just a couple of months ago, and what you saw in the Delta was the very fact that you have a water supply that's sitting at sea level, basically, landscape, irrigation issues, population living 30 feet, up to 30 feet below sea level as the water's passing by, held back by peat moss type of levees that are not engineered levees, but are levees made of nothing more than just peat moss piled up after decades and decades of time. Peat moss is subjected to flooding, weakening, gophers, anything else that are happening there, wave action, wind action, and there have been studies that shows that a 6.5 earthquake in the center of that delta can wipe out up to 20 islands, which would cause salt intrusion from San Francisco Bay that would inundate these islands, inundate the delta, and cause a disruption of a major supply of water to Southern California. And that is the key that we really wanted to emphasize today. This is where we need the action, and this is why Gary Tobin of the LA Chamber and the other business communities and labor groups that we are working with are going to underscore to you today how important it is to get action from the state legislature and the governor to get them to work together. Metropolitan can't advocate, but we certainly can educate. And so take my comments as education to the fact that Gary Tobin would be perfect at now taking on an advocacy role in this area.
Thanks, Mr. Ivy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn, and then Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Well, I was going to comment on the fact that I was able to tour the Sacramento Delta along with Councilmember Perry, and it was a very eye-opening trip. And I had wanted to do that for a number of years, and never seemed to figure out the right scheduling time. But I'm really glad I went, because it really made me realize what a critical issue it is, and the whole idea of the dual intake conveyance and how important that is. So I came back really more energized, really, about working with the governor, with the state legislature, to really look at those issues. And I think that is key, is education. And I think anyone who's taken those trips really, it's just nothing else substitutes for actually seeing it yourself, eyeballing it, and seeing, how critical it is and how precarious that water source is, and then how much we depend on that in Los Angeles. It's really good. That's the kind of thing I'd like to maybe encourage with neighborhood councils, or figuring out a way to get more people to really experience that trip. One of the things, and I really wanted to thank Councilmember Bill Rosendahl for talking about really maybe next year focusing on legislation and getting our delegation to focus on a number of issues. One is the idea of the kind of water conservation that maybe we can begin expecting from the agricultural community. And hopefully when we talk about that, you'll be able to talk about some incentives, because I'd really like to see us look to incentivizing farmers to become more water conscious. And I think that's the direction probably be most acceptable because that's agriculture has a pretty loud voice in Sacramento. I don't think they're going to buy into this unless we really look at balancing incentives with regulations. One of the things I just wanted to briefly ask you about, I know in the early 90s we went through that last very severe drought, and we actually, MWD got into water rationing. And I don't know if you see that in the future. And I also know that as one of the member cities that gets water from you, where are we in the line of, would there be other cities that would be rationed first? Or if that were to happen, which is pretty severe, where would LA fall in terms of being under water rationing if we were to experience some severe crisis?
Thank you. Earlier I mentioned that the board of Metropolitan adopted a water allocation plan. They haven't implemented it yet, and so you're referring to what's the timing of that and what triggers that. The board is in the middle of looking at what our conditions are going into 2009. What kind of storage levels do we have? What kind of weather do we expect now that we're in the new water year? And they're going to be dealing with that in October and November through December. And in early December is when we get our first indication of how much water we're going to get from the state project. And as the year goes on and the weather changes, that supply may increase over time if we get more rain. But the first estimate is in December, and it's a conservative estimate. The board wanted a plan in place so that if we needed to go to allocation, we'd have it.
Right.
But they have made no decision yet on when to trigger that. And
so you're calling it allocation instead of rationing?
Pardon me?
You're calling it allocation instead of rationing?
We're calling it allocation to differentiate it from the authorities that we have versus what other retailers have when they deal with their customers directly. But on the water supply allocation plan, or for this discussion, we can call it rationing. The intent of the board when they adopted the plan was to come up with a way of minimizing impact on the region overall.
Right.
So it looked at what kind of supply do we have locally,
right.
what kind of demand, and how can we even things out for all the agencies across the region so that not one area doesn't have a disproportionate amount of economic impact. And that's the policy direction of the allocation plan that they adopted.
You know, it's interesting because it kind of, I don't know how many people kind of missed that even in your presentation about water allocation. I think even the terms that you use make an impact. I would suggest you kind of talk about it in terms of water rationing. I think that gets the public's interest. I think that gets the local policymakers' interest. I think that gets the business community's interest when you talk about we actually could have a water rationing plan that gets implemented. I think that raises it to a level that really makes people go, wow. Somehow water allocation, I don't think, has that same impact to the general public. So it's a suggestion.
Thank you for those comments. And earlier when I introduced the topic, I said we're in a serious situation.
Right.
So I'm hoping that the council and others that are hearing about the water supply condition know that it's more than just drought. This is not just about drought.
Right.
This is about the kind of things that were discussed when the video was shown.
Right.
Climate change potential, the other kind of fishery challenges that we face that are going to have long-lasting impacts on our water supply.
Right.
And the delta is going to be key because our additional supply for any new growth is going to come from local. It's going to come from recycled water, conservation, stormwater runoff, but we still need to depend on a state project for our base load amount of water.
Right. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Councilwoman Perry and members of the council. Well, it was probably 100 years ago that this council was having similar conversations. None of us up here look like William Mulholland, and you all know that story, but it was key to the growth of Los Angeles. And we're talking about a similar story today. I'd like to follow up particularly on the discussions about the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. As you know, the city of Los Angeles, through many years of investment, has a diverse and a high-quality water supply. In addition, the city has been a leader in water conservation and is making strides to improve water supply reliability through public education, recycling, and groundwater cleanup. In fact, we use less water today in Southern California and our Los Angeles area than we did 20 years ago. Yet we find ourselves in a situation where the city's water supplies and ability to meet current and future needs are in doubt. And the principal threat is the failure of the state of California to construct new water conveyance facilities in or around the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta to protect a majority of the state's water supply from natural or man-made disaster. The California economy and the well-being of the majority of our population, in fact 60% of the population of California, rests with the State Water Project. But the State Water Project can only do its job if the water that is stored in reservoirs above the delta can be moved through or around it. The challenge is political, it's technical, it's economic, but it must be met, and it must be met soon. There's a broad consensus in the state that the current means of conveying water through the delta is not sustainable. In fact, that it contributes to environmental degradation and in a time of disaster places the entire state water system at risk. The Chamber and indeed the entire business community in Southern California are greatly concerned about the potential of water shortages and the impact these shortages will have on our residents and our businesses. As you've already heard from Councilwoman Hahn, Councilwoman Perry, it is important to take a tour of the Delta. We are conducting tours of the Delta in partnership with Metropolitan Water District. We're also forging partnerships with business organizations up and down the state, from San Francisco in the Bay Area, the Central Valley, Orange County, and San Diego. Our goal is to ensure that this urgency is understood in Sacramento and by our elected officials here at home. We've also reached out to organized labor and are working with the carpenters, the operating engineers, and the Teamsters to ensure broad-based consensus in our region. So far, we've met with 12 members of the Assembly, the California Assembly, and 4 senators from Southern California. We're here today to urge the city to take a strong role in pushing Sacramento to avert a water catastrophe. We ask the City Council to broadly support measures that will secure reliable and high-quality water supplies from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. Further, we urge that the Council direct the Department of Water and Power to take an active role in negotiating solutions and future water bonds. The city's livelihood is at stake, as you've already heard several times today. And when the time comes, the City of Los Angeles should be quick to act in support of water reliability measures on any statewide ballot. The Chamber also urges the City Council to take a leadership role in working with MWD and other cities throughout the region in partnering with our state legislators. That way, we can ensure a reliable and high-quality water supply for our future, because we are speaking with one unified voice. Well, in summary, I have 4 recommendations. First of all, that all of you take a tour of the Delta. Our next one is scheduled next week, and we can send you that information, and we'll also send you the information on future tours. You will find it to be a very memorable experience. Secondly, if you would like, participate with us in meetings with other state legislators. As we've just discussed, we've already met with 16. We would welcome your participation. Thirdly, direct the DWP to be very much involved in these conversations. MWD has taken the lead on statewide conversations, but DWP should be involved as well. And finally, work with other cities to create a unified voice from Southern California. It's interesting that water is on the tip of the tongue of everyone in Northern California, particularly those in the agricultural community. And as a man who grew up on a farm, I know you talk about water every single day when you're a farmer. Well, we don't talk about water enough here in Southern California. We used to 100 years ago when we passed a series of bonds to build the Los Angeles Aqueduct and so many other projects. But lately, we haven't talked enough about it. So I applaud you for this conversation today and look forward to working with you on the advocacy part of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, Gary, and I'm glad you mentioned that you come from a farm, because you understand the reality of a farm and its need of water, and they do talk about it every day. I need leadership out of you and the business community to stand up and talk about the farmer from a positive standpoint. They shouldn't be doing rice anymore. They shouldn't be doing cotton anymore, and they shouldn't be wasting the water they're wasting. And a lot of politicians are afraid to talk about it. It's like one of those quiet little elephants in the room. And so what we need out of you, frankly, because you're a great business community developing the strategies that make a lot of sense, you need to help us, the business community, to sit down with the leadership of the farming community. And the farming community has to grow up, and realize that the water is so precious that we can't waste it and we can't grow crops that make no sense. Can I have a commitment that you'll assist us in the politics of water?
Well, you absolutely have that commitment. Now, you know, and any attorney in this room knows that riparian water rights have been in this state for a long time.
I know it.
And they're well-founded in law. So it's not so simple as to talk about it in this room. There will be a great deal of work involved with your conversation, and you will have our support.
I like that, the fact that you'll have the support, because we need to create the right legislation that farmers will buy into and not be threatened by it. Because what's happened in the past, it's been one of these, well, I'm an urban elected, you're the farmer, so we just don't discuss it. And they don't really act on it. The day is over when we grow rice and we grow cotton and we waste water in the farmlands. But you bring such an incredible personal pathos by having grown up in a farm. And I think you could help to the legislation. And I'll pledge to you that if we can create the right piece of legislation, I'll go up there and talk. I'll do whatever we need to do as a group of urban dwellers to work with the farmers so that we get that issue into legislation that changes the dynamic. And I make that pledge. This will do a dramatic change in the way water is perceived by both the farmers and the urban people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl, and I want to say thank you to the entire panel for your comprehensive presentation. And with that, we will move to the next presentation by the Department of Water and Power and Bureau of Sanitation, Jim McDaniel and Enrique Saldivar. Okay. DWP, would you like to go first?
Yes.
All right, great.
I'm Jim McDaniel. Good morning, members of the council. I'm the Senior Assistant General Manager for the water system at the Department of Water and Power. I would like to do a presentation that I think that'll fit nicely with Steve Arakawa's and let you know specifically what we're doing here in Los Angeles, and then Tracy's on the water supply side, and Tracy's going to follow up and also tell you what some of the highlights of what's going on in the Bureau of Sanitation. As Mr. Arakawa mentioned, that there are a number of sources of supply for water coming to Los Angeles. Most notably, the Los Angeles Aqueduct has been historically been our major supply. But one of the things that many people don't realize is that the supply portfolio has changed very dramatically for the city of Los Angeles over the last 25 years or so. You can see on the graph there, if you go back to 1980-81, the amount of water that we were getting from MWD is denoted by the little green part of the bar, and the Los Angeles Aqueduct is the blue part of the bar. And you compare that to the most recent year, the 2000-2007-8, and you can see that we've dramatically shifted our water supplies towards Metropolitan Water District. There's a number of reasons for this, most notably a lot of the water that we've traditionally exported from the Eastern Sierra is now staying in the Eastern Sierra for environmental purposes up there. We're filling Mono Lake, we're rewatering the lower Owens River, we're controlling dust on Owens Lake, and all those projects take water to restore some of the environmental damage that's been done, and we've had to depend a lot more on Metropolitan going forward. One of the other things you notice on this graph is that sources of supply vary greatly from year to year, and it was the wisdom of our forefathers that invested in not only Metropolitan, not only our LA Aqueduct supply, but also local groundwater, that we have the ability to meet the challenges of nature when rainfall patterns and precipitation change. The last thing I want to point out on this slide is that there's a very small amount of recycled water being used currently. That's a great opportunity for us, and I'll be talking more about that as we go forward. This slide is a pie chart just showing you in our most current fiscal year what our water supply breakdown was. Normally, in a normal year, we haven't seen what's a, quote, normal year for quite a while now, but we're planning on about 50% of our water coming from Metropolitan in a normal year. This last year was a little less than that, so we ended up more from Metropolitan, 65%. Steve mentioned some of the current water supply conditions that we're facing. We did have a record low snowpack in the winter of 2006-2007. That also corresponded to record low rainfall here in the basin in 2006-2007. Followed by this last year, 2007-2008, we had a fairly decent snowpack, but we saw some of the things that may be attributable to climate change. One of the issues that came up was we had a good snowpack, and it, for lack of a better word, evaporated on us. Normally, the snow melts and it runs off. Since we had extremely dry conditions the year before, some of it seeped into the ground, and some of it simply evaporated due to the extremely dry spring and hot winds that we had that season. Colorado River Basin is in a continued state of drought that's lasted over 8 years. Steve mentioned the federal court ruling significantly restricting Delta exports on the project. And all of this has led Governor Schwarzenegger to declare statewide drought in June 4th of 2008. That same day, the DWP board forwarded to this city council a historic water conservation ordinance, and your council approved that ordinance on August 8th of this year, one of the most aggressive water conservation ordinances on the books in Southern California. And overall, as Steve also showed you, storage statewide is in a declining situation. So what are we going to do to respond to this? The mayor has issued a plan that's a 5-part plan, 5 strategies to ensure sustainable water supply. The first leg of that is going to be to increase water conservation dramatically. Currently, this year, we're budgeting at DWP over $20 million for water conservation. We're going to drastically increase recycled water usage. We're going to capture some of that storm water that currently flows out to the ocean. We need to clean up our San Fernando Valley groundwater basins, and we need to expand the amount of storage that we take advantage of in Southern California locally. So these 5 strategies are necessary for a number of reasons besides just drought conditions. As I mentioned, we have variability and sometimes just a plain lack of snowpack. We do have the drought periods, but we do have environmental mitigation legal restrictions. So going forward, we have a plan going out to 2030 for a sustained water supply. During that period, we anticipate that the city of Los Angeles population will increase about 370,000 people. Our water demand is expected to increase by 106,000 acre feet. Now, an acre foot is about 325,000 gallons. It's about the amount of water 2 average households will use in a year. And what we're going to do, and I think this is the most notable point of the mayor's plan, is we're going to meet those future increases through local supplies, conservation and recycling. We are not going to depend on additional exports to meet our future demands. This is a huge paradigm shift for the City of Los Angeles and the Department of Water and Power. The next slide does show that good conservation record that we've had. The white line at the top shows how our population has increased. The bars at the bottom show our water usage, and you can see it's varied over the years, but it's essentially remained approximately level. The yellow bars indicate water use before the last major drought, and the blue bars were post-91 drought. So let me talk a little bit about the 5 strategies in a bit more detail. As I mentioned, we have about 100,000 acre-feet of additional supply that we need to account for by the year 2030. About half of that, or 50,000 acre-feet, will be from water conservation. The City Council has taken the first step in that by enacting the Emergency Water Conservation Ordinance and the 14 prohibited uses. I believe there was a comment earlier about water use restrictions. Well, we have water use restrictions in the City of Los Angeles, and we are enforcing those. Our water conservation team began issuing citations on September 23rd, 2008. We're working with the other city departments to do water audits and reduce outdoor water use, retrofit plumbing at their facilities, and repair leaks. One of our big focuses is going to be on outdoor water use. About 40% of residential use in Los Angeles is water used outside the home. So a big focus is going to be to improve landscape water efficiency for residential customers. We're going to be promoting incentive programs to increase our water savings from water conservation rebate programs. We're going to be targeting parks and large landscapes for water use efficiencies. We're currently in the second year of a 5-year memorandum of agreement with the Department of Recreation and Parks to rehabilitate irrigation systems in parks and also provide jobs for youth in the neighborhood who need job training and work. And then we're also going to be refining the green building program. We have the beginning of a green building ordinance on the books, but we need to increase that. There's opportunities for us to enhance the water conservation elements of that. The second strategy is to maximize water recycling. I believe Councilman Labange mentioned that all water is recycled water. That's true when you think of it in the big picture of the water cycle of water evaporation and rain and runoff. But currently we're only recycling about 1% of the water that's actually used in the City of Los Angeles. And we want to increase that 6-fold by 2019. The 2 key strategies that we're looking at for that are groundwater replenishment with advanced treated wastewater, similar to what is being done in Orange County. This will require upgrades of the Tillman plant to advanced treatment, and Tracy will be talking a bit more about that. And we anticipate being able to get about 15,000 acre-feet per year by 2019 from that source. We'll also be expanding our recycled water distribution system for irrigation and industrial use. This is the so-called purple pipe system, and we'll be building 120 miles of new purple pipe. The third element of the strategy is to enhance stormwater capture. We're going to be doing this by, the purpose here is to capture some of that stormwater that currently was engineered originally to flush out to the ocean just as fast as possible. When the city was originally developed, the goals were flood control and maximizing space for development. Now we look at that and say, well, that wasn't such a good strategy. We're losing a tremendous resource. So now we're called upon to go back and re-engineer that system and try to capture that groundwater and recharge our groundwater basin, especially in the San Fernando Valley. We estimate that with this we can get about 20,000 acre-feet per year on this type of project, and a couple of the example projects are the rehabilitation of the Big Tujunga Dam and the rehabilitation of the San Fernando Valley spreading grounds to maximize recharge and storage. The next strategy is to accelerate the cleanup of our San Fernando groundwater basin. I've mentioned that basin several times. The problem is that basin is currently under increasing contamination from industrial solvents, a lot of which go back to the World War II era. We've had the luxury up until now of pumping our groundwater from different areas of the basin. We no longer have that luxury. We can no longer pump our full 87,000 acre-foot allocation from the basin, and we need prompt action to clean up the basin. As a beginning of that, we have a pilot project to do wellhead treatment at 2 of the wells, working in conjunction with our regulator at the Department of Public Health to make sure that that can be done safely. When we'll continue to work with the EPA and other regulatory agencies to hold the polluters accountable for this so that the citizens of Los Angeles don't have to pay for the pollution. The final strategy is to expand groundwater storage. We have a great basin, although somewhat contaminated in the San Fernando Basin, but we're also looking for other opportunities in Antelope Valley and in the Central Basin south of LA to enhance groundwater storage. We will be working to adjudicate the basin in the Antelope Valley and also to work with the West and Central Coast basins to enhance storage there. So in conclusion, water supply conditions require development of more sustainable water supply. We are committed to a reliable water supply for now and the future. The water plan follows the city's integrated resource plan, the IRP for the city of LA, that was developed through a 7-year stakeholder process in conjunction with the Bureau of Sanitation. And several of the IRP initiatives are a part of the water plan's key 5 strategies. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the Department of Water and Power? All right, then we'll go to the Bureau of Sanitation. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith for the first, Mr. Reyes and then Mr. Smith before we go on to the next presentation.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that. There's been a lot of work and partnership with the process of the revitalization of the river. My question has to do more with what we can do in the future. DWP, under the stewardship of Ron Dean, did the first $3 million to actually get the study off the ground about 5 years ago now. So as we've been going through this process, can you talk about any projects in progress that would help us green the river by achieving goals such as increased infiltration capacity, off-channel storage areas, or other mechanisms to slow the water down during the large storm events?
Good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Tom Erb. I'm the Director of Water Resources at DWP. We've participated in the development of the city's LA River Master Plan, and as you say, one of the key components of the master plan is to try to capture more water upstream so we can reduce the high flows in the LA River. So some of the measures that we're working on, as Mr. McDaniel talked about, is trying to work upstream and capture that water in our enhanced spreading basins and other flood control basins upstream. In addition, I serve on a local regional entity called the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan process. There are representatives of the city there who are advocating for other measures that could improve the actual Los Angeles River. So we're really looking for partnerships and with other agencies to try to look at how can we work together to try to green the LA River, capture more water, reduce runoff, trash in the river, all of those things.
Are there better ways to link the goals that you are discussing with revitalization of the river? Meaning, if you look at, for example, in my district, you have a lot of city property that sits right at the bank of the river that have a lot of acreage in terms of control of land. If you look at what other countries have done, in Munich, in Berlin, the Potsdamer Platz facility where they actually store water, they have green rooftops, they have created new value in the airspace because of the amounts of investment on the substructures whose cisterns are there to help store and filter out the water and actually run the gray water back into the surface and let it filtrate through the ground to water to do the necessary recharging of our aquifers that right now are in need of that whole process of filtration and cleanliness. Why aren't we looking at it from that point of view? Why can't we stimulate those discussions where you have a greater impact in terms of affecting communities and people and actually greening and dealing with much of the challenges we have in the lower part of the river, not just the north? Is that something that we can look forward to?
I think those are areas that we're also looking at. I'm aware that Commissioner Paula Daniels of the Board of Public Works is taking the lead on the development of low-impact development. We're participating on the city's team that's helping to look at what are the types of measures that can be incorporated into new construction to try to capture water on site, infiltrate it so it doesn't run off of the property, and also reduce water use, put it to beneficial use. So those are things that we're very interested. We're looking at how we can partner with other city agencies to help encourage that type of development. And actually, I think there will be looked at what ordinance opportunities are there to actually require those types of changes in the future.
I do have a couple more questions. I'll push my button again.
I'm sorry. I can't see. Mr. Smith, did you want to speak next?
Thank you.
All right, yes, fine. No, you are next.
I'm glad you remember my name.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Just a couple quick questions. Mr. Reyes talked about Germany, and I remember I was in Mexico City recently and saw virtually every building in Mexico City has cisterns on the top of them. Are we doing anything in the way of trying to find ways to help people do that? I know we've done a lot in the way of subsidizing solar roofs. Have we looked at home cisterns and assisting them? I bought 2 of those 65-gallon rain barrels, and I get all the rain. I get 130 gallons of free water from God every year to water my plants and extend out the season for me. Is there any thought of helping people do those kind of projects at their home so they can utilize the free water we get and help in that way?
I'm aware that the Bureau of Sanitation has taken the lead and actually looked at how they can encourage the development of the solutions that you mentioned. I think we need to look at what other opportunities are out there for the city to help incentivize these types of measures into new construction. As you say, in other parts of the world this is commonplace, but it's sort of new for Southern California. What we have done so far, working with other city departments, is we worked with organizations like Tree People to actually demonstrate what can be done, and there are a number of demonstration projects that show how water can be saved in cisterns and other measures on site. And so we have been advocating the development of demonstration projects.
Okay, and I think maybe you should look to some federal and state grant money for that. I know sanitation used grant money to get people to do home composting and subsidize the cost of that. So some thoughts there. On the issue of the contamination of the valley wells, I know many years ago, and maybe it was 2 decades ago now, there was a consensus agreement with the federal government, with the real polluters, which was mostly Lockheed Corporation and some other aerospace manufacturing, that actually polluted the land back in the World War II area, that has now polluted a good portion of our East Valley wells. There was a cleanup project which was going to take a long time. Is there any way to go into the federal government and asking them to expedite that, because we need those wells online? We can no longer afford to have them offline, and I know there was 20 or 30 wells that have been closed for decades only for that reason. Is there a way to expedite the cleaning up of those East Valley contaminated flood basins, and then collateral to that, the use of recharged water, which the Daily News killed many years ago with their headline? Where are you at bringing that whole discussion back to your commission and to this council so we can take action on the concept of recharging our valley, in particular our valley's wells?
Right. It all fits together in this plan, and that's why one of the elements of the water plan is the cleanup of the basin, because we can't do recharge either with highly treated, purified wastewater or with stormwater until we get the basin cleaned up. the federal government is currently in a process called a focused feasibility study of looking at what the next stage of that project that you mentioned that was funded a couple of decades ago. The problem with that project, it was vastly undersized to fit the problem, and basically the contamination plume blew past the little picket fence they set up, and it's contaminated further parts of the basin. We're in very serious discussions with them about what the size of the next project should be. They are still thinking of a smaller project. We're telling them it's mandatory that this be a major size project to deal with this major size problem. And we may be asking for your assistance in communicating that to the lawmakers in the federal government to help us out.
I think just tell us when and where, and we'll be there on that. I think we all understand the need for that. Has Lockheed and the others that were identified in the 1980s been totally now indemnified? They paid their penalty, or there still more we can get from them? I see Lockheed is one of the few stocks in the stock market actually doing well. Can we go back to them and get more out of them now, or are they out of the mix now because they paid their penalty in the 80s?
We're working with the city attorney right now to evaluate what our options are in that area. My understanding is there will be opportunities for us to go forward, and it's about all I can say.
Okay, well, that's good news, and please keep us informed if you need our help. Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. Actually, Councilmember Smith covered most of what I wanted to talk about. How soon can we get a report back on the East Valley spreading grounds, and when we can put those back into full use?
Well, the spreading grounds are going to continue to be used. The problem is the extraction wells that we use to pump the water back out are becoming increasingly more contaminated. But we could get a report back to council in 30 days if you would like on where we're at on the
not only where we're at, but how did we get to where we are? Were there particular industries that contributed to it, et cetera? What we're talking about heavy metals. I want a detailed report about what got us to where we are, to where we're not using those wells. But the reason why I say that the spreading grounds haven't been used, because I happen to live right next to those spreading grounds, and we have a high school right nearby, and there's always been some ideas about what we can utilize those spreading grounds for as well, passive use on the walkways or the surrounding areas of them. So, but I've always noticed that there's really only one segment that actually has standing water in it, and very rare. Unlike when I grew up, I remember every year you would see that they were utilized for a good number of months out of the year, and over the last 5 or 6 years it seems like we're hardly using them at all.
Right, and part of the reason for that is the dams farther up in the canyons, because of seismic deficiencies that have been discovered in those dams. The operating level of the dams have been reduced so that they can hardly hold any water in them. That's one of the projects is the Big Tahunga Dam. When we can get that dam fully rehabilitated, then we can store much larger quantities of water, and then we can release that slowly over time, and you'll see more months out of the year there actually will be water coming into the basin.
Now that Tahunga Dam, didn't it get some federal monies or something like that, and they are going to restore that dam?
It's currently, yes. The county with some federal money and the Department of Water and Power are currently doing that project.
So that's one of the contributing factors?
Yes.
Okay, look forward to hearing a full report.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Labange, followed by Ms. Hahn, followed by Mr. Reyes.
Would you describe the Pollock well for them and the process?
The Pollock wells are a series of wells that are near the LA River in the Atwater Village area. They are they have contamination with industrial solvents also. So we are running the well water through a granular activated carbon filter to remove the solvents and then produce pure, clean drinking water from that. It's an expensive process, but it's worth it to have that water supply available.
And where's that water from Fletcher Drive going?
Well, it can get distributed. Most of that gets distributed in the local area, but I believe, maybe I'll defer to Mr. Yanada on the operational specifics.
It can serve the area east of there to Elysian Reservoir. It's basically pumped from Fletcher Pump Station over to Elysian Reservoir, so it does serve part of downtown L.A., the western side of East L.A.
So that's amazing. I didn't know we put it right back in the water system.
Yes, it is
Right.
treated.
But it comes from where, though, actually? It comes to the wells up by the Glendale and Verdugo Wash?
There is a well field in the area which is just east of the L.A. River there. So we pump water from there. It's actually treated at the Pollock well site with 4 GAC chambers.
And how often is it tested?
It's tested on a week, continuously.
Every day?
Yes.
Right, that's the key. And members, I see the water and power out, usually a single person in a single car, going from place to place with a little, like a fishing tackle box, which does the testing, if that's correct. Would that be correct, Jim?
Yep.
Did I describe
Yes.
it? So I think it's important. And those are good questions, Mr. Cardenas, about systems that we in the past would see, but the changes due to all of the impacts, whether the climate, whether the season, or the environment.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize there, because I know there's been a concern about the safety of some of these waters, and the safety of the water is our first and foremost interest. We will not pump a well if it's contaminated, and we continuously test the water. So although the contamination of the groundwater basin is a very serious resource concern to us, it is not a health concern. I want to emphasize that because we are not going to do anything to endanger the health of our customers.
So important. And do you test public fountains? Who tests public fountains?
Most
public
of
water
those
fountains
are tested by whoever's the property owner.
Like Record Parks would test them, or some. How do they know how to test them? Do you guys oversee that at all? Because it's your water.
Right, and we work with the Department of Rec and Parks to help them out. As you know, at Griffith Park there were some issues with
about
the
10
water
years
quality.
ago, right.
We took over major parts of the system there
Just,
to help with the water
forward
quality.
on that. Thank you on that issue there, and it's so key, so important. Constant information needs to be spread to the public about the value of water.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to just touch on briefly is, how do we encourage people to conserve before we get to the point of maybe mandatory conservation? But I know I brought this up before, and we kind of have a different tiered rate structure throughout the city. And there are some areas of the city we kind of give them a pass on a certain amount of water that they use before a certain rate structure kicks in. How do we try to do a better job of, particularly with the rates, maybe encouraging people to conserve? One of the things I was thinking of, we don't want to punish anybody, but is there a way that, particularly, I know people are always concerned about our rates rising, and every time we have a water rate increase, it's a very difficult thing to do here on the City Council. We get a lot of criticism. Does DWP really need it? Is there a way to consider if a person really conserves water, if they get to a certain point where they're totally green, drought resistant, they've gotten to a threshold of water usage, maybe we reward them by, their rate does not increase.
Okay. Let me answer two things. One, on mandatory conservation, I consider the actions that this council has taken in passing the prohibited uses. That is mandatory water conservation. Those are very serious restrictions that have been imposed. They're the most aggressive restrictions in Southern California.
We haven't gotten to the point where we say you can only water on Thursdays.
It's not yet, but that in the ordinance that you passed, that would be the next step, is to limit watering to 3 days a week. On the rate the rate issue, we're currently at the council's recommendation from the last rate action. We're currently revisiting the whole structure. We're looking at the water budget that's provided for each customer. We're looking at the temperature zones and the other things to make sure that those are fair and equitable, or as fair and equitable as they can be.
Right. Which frankly has changed.
Right.
It's changed. I think San Pedro was as hot as the Valley was last week. So I mean, it's not the old conventional wisdom on which parts of the city are harder than the others.
Right.
And we've had some unseasonably warm times down in the harbor area that I don't think would have been unheard of probably 10 or 20 years ago.
A week ago, it was 100 degrees.
Exactly. So hopefully you're looking at all that anyway.
So and just to let everybody know, the way that the ordinance works right now is every customer has a water budget, and we're working on making that as accurate as possible. But then when we do ask for conservation, we reduce the budget. Everybody's budget gets reduced by a certain amount. And the customers that comply, that do the right thing, or that have already been doing the right thing and using less than their budget, their rates do not go up. In fact, their rates will go down because they're using less water, and our rates are 100% volumetric based. There's no fixed charge. So you use less, you pay less. And the costs then will go to those customers that are exceeding their budget. They will pay the excess. So we're trying to incentivize customers
Basically, you pay
who are doing the right
you
thing.
pay for what you use.
Right, and if you do the right thing, you don't get punished.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. McDaniel, Mr. Herb, we've been meeting as a committee, River Committee, for 5 years now, almost 6. And I appreciate the work you're doing with Paula Daniel, who is a commissioner. But this council and colleagues, I hope you can listen to what I'm saying, because it's, I think, significant. When we talked about the first $3 million, that was the economic development. But now we're at the implementation stage. And Mr. McDaniel, as Assistant General Manager for Water, we need to implement what this plan means. So I would want to ask you point blank, how important is the river to you in your role in dealing with implementation of this plan?
Well,
please hold my time.
I think it's a vital portion of the overall integrated resource plan. I think one of the important things that we did as part of that plan was we allocated a certain part of our highly treated wastewater flow from the Tillman plant to go to the river so that we would have adequate water to supply ecological as well as environmental and other uses, and just river uses, so there's water in the river, and that was a change. Specific projects, one of the ones that we're doing right now is the Headworks project. A significant part of that project calls for a river restoration. We're going to bring some water in, do some of that natural cleansing, create an environment, a more riverine environment, and tear down some of the concrete walls there. And the structure that we're building is going to have a green roof on it. So we are looking at those type of things.
What I'd like to see is a stronger dialogue between yourself and your team and the committee. The committee has 5 council members on there: Councilmember LaBonge, Councilmember Huizar, Councilmember Garcetti, myself, and who am I leaving out? Councilmember Gruhl. And these are the various areas in which we have these nodes that are going to be developing. So the work with the Army Corps in terms of how they see the water behaving because of the flood control aspect. Is there coordination with the County Flood Control District and the Army Corps of Engineers so that we would have the latest information about your work as we collaborate with them on river projects? Do we have that level of dialogue, given it's a multi-agency effort, this whole corridor?
Well, in the The integrated resources plan that I mentioned,
Please hold my time.
or excuse me, the integrated regional water management plan. There are representatives at LA County Flood Control, Army Corps, and Los Angeles Department of Water and Power are all participating in those processes. So I think we can look for more opportunities so we can collaborate, and I think there probably is more that we can do, but I think we are having dialogue and we are looking to see how we can all piggyback on each other's efforts to work together.
I'd like to see, if possible, as chair of the committee, a stronger dialogue with yourselves, with the both of you, if I may. I think it will enhance our ability to look at the implementation phase, look at the 5 nodes, and build on all the good that you have already started. I think that's critical. I keep looking at the clock. We're running out of time as elected officials, but institutionalizing these changes will stand for generations. And just the last question, when we met here, the council, I had asked for a report back on potential water rate restructuring that will be more equitable in terms of given the conservation efforts and given the folks who are on the lifeline and limited incomes. What's the status of that?
We've got a draft proposal ready to be presented to our Board of Commissioners. It should happen probably within the next 30 days, and then it'll be forwarded to the council from there.
Great. So, Mr. McDaniel, Mr. Herbert, if we can get together, maybe before the next, maybe not this committee meeting, maybe the following, and coordinate and strengthen that dialogue, because I would really love to have a stronger presence of the implementation of these plans. Because economic development, I think, has one role, and you have a very significant role in terms of how we look at the goals that you're setting in terms of storm water harvesting technologies, water storage, and perhaps even stimulating a different resource base, given all the city properties that we do control along the riverway, that can help meet your goals and actually benefit the city budget in the long run.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Rosendahl?
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to tell you, you guys are great. You've done a great job, and I'm very proud of you. Have you done any bill stuffers lately, simple bill stuffers to the homeowner saying what the rules are now? You cannot water between 9 and da-da-da-da. You can't do this and that, and you shouldn't do this and that. Simple. Because I still drive around and see, be they gardeners or people at noon in a hot day watering. And I don't need the drought buster card and nail them. Ultimately, if we have to, we need to. But I think we need a simple piece of paper, not just in one bill stuffer, but do it for a while so that when it comes at me when I open my bill, oh yeah, these are the rules and this is what I should do. Can we get that?
The current bill stuffer has that information. It talks about the new ordinance that your council passed. It outlines the 14 prohibited
Simpler,
uses.
I want you to put it on my refrigerator door.
Okay.
If you can make one of those simple things, because when I open it up and I see all these pictures and all that stuff, I trash it, I pay the bill. But if I have one of these things I can put on my refrigerator that tells me what the rules are, I'll leave it on my refrigerator door. Okay, the second thing is, what do you suggest to the homeowner that they can do outside of their home to conserve? Let me give you a couple examples. You guys should take every medium we have, every piece of land that we have, and no more grass. Period. No more sprinkling systems either. What you put in is draft-resistant plants. The stuff that grows and lives in the deserts. So that every bit of the land you have a play on, it's draft resistant. Forget this irrigation business. That's a luxury we can no longer afford. And then at the same time, I think we should say to the homeowners, especially the homeowners who take such pride in their yard and their flowers and all that good stuff, flowers fine, but grass, no. And how do we make that little piece on the other side of the sidewalk no longer the grass? These are little things, but that would be great. If you said in a bill stuffer that for you to be more efficient and more effective in the new day we're living in, try this, try that, so that the neighborhood block gets that sense, the neighborhood council gets that sense. In fact, I would love for you to do a special presentation. I have 8 neighborhood councils. in my district and come before my neighborhood councils with a presentation explaining the new day and how we should make our yards. That would be very helpful. My neighborhood councils and homeowner groups would love that. Another one is, when we've done this compost business, we can give out bins. How about what Mr. Smith was saying? He's a visionary here. A rain barrel program. Have we thought about how we're going to do that?
I believe the Bureau of Sanitation has a program that they're working on.
Yeah. No, we just love that, and we want to get that out there. Another thing I want to say is about tree people. I planted some trees on Saturday in Delray, 21 trees. The whole neighborhood got together, and I hugged a tree, and I named it Paul after Paul Newman. No, they gave me the authority to do that. Reader's Digest was taking pictures, basically because the community stepped to the plate. And I just was there to bless what the community was already doing. But the fact that a tree plays a major role. And one of my biggest fears, I've been saying this, nobody's answering me. I come up Centinela, and I look at your DWP land up there that you let people have a plot, and it's the Rose Garden. It's fabulous. But somebody planted a whole bunch of trees, and there's no connection with water. So the trees are dying. I love the mayor's A Million Trees, but if we don't tie it into a commitment for the first year or so to water those trees, Andy Lipkiss is pulling out his hair. He's had 2 million kids go through his program in the last 38 years, but we have to tie water into that particular tree. I could go on and on and on, but I just got to tell you guys are doing a great job. I'm a big purple pipe believer. The day has come. I even love our urinals all of a sudden in City Hall no longer are the flush. Somebody got around the union issue that made such a big deal out of it, and now we have waterless urinals, which again saves us money.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you,
Councilmember, if I could just add, LADWP just entered into a 3-year agreement with Tree People for any future projects at LADWP to make sure that we could utilize their expertise to be more efficient on our projects.
Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker for the third time.
How many more speakers do we have?
We have Mr. Labange following you. Mr. Cardenas.
Oh, okay. I was going to end debate, but since it's only one more speaker, never mind.
All right, then, Mr. Labange.
I just wanted to say I'm not for pulling up the grass on parkways. I'm not for doing that as of yet. So let's have a full discussion on that. I am for the right kind of waterless urinals throughout and make them successful. Thank you. And I'm for palm trees, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. We do have a few speaker cards on this item, and I will call them up very... Oh, I'm sorry. Sanitation.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Menamidi, Chief Operating Officer for the Bureau of Sanitation. Well, thank you for having us here today. The Bureau of Sanitation is very excited about partnering with Water and Power in the area of recycled water and stormwater capture and enhancement. In the Bureau, we treat about 460 million gallons a day of wastewater at 4 treatment plants within the city of Los Angeles. So there really is a great potential there for us to reuse the water, and we are looking forward to working with Water and Power on seeing what we can do to try to maximize that resource. Jim McDaniel spoke a little bit about the water IRP that the Bureau of Sanitation embarked on back in 1999. This was an effort back in that time that was really a new concept. We were focusing on our wastewater facilities and our master plan in that area, but we thought that it would be much more beneficial to look at things in a broader perspective and not only look at wastewater and what we needed for our wastewater facilities, but also to look in the areas of water supply, water recycling, stormwater capture and management, and also water conservation. So it was really a very broad perspective that we took. It was a 7-year process which involved numerous stakeholders, including neighborhood council participants, homeowner associations, various departments and offices within the city of LA, and other public agencies, as well as environmental groups. The culmination of all of that work resulted in our Integrated Resources Plan, completed and approved by Council in November of 2006. And as a matter of fact, just this last week, we brought forward our second annual report to Council, and that was approved by you, I believe it was last Tuesday. So that was really what started a lot of the work that we've been doing with the Department of Water and Power. It provided us with the nexus for DWP to move forward and start taking from there some of the components that we had talked a lot about in terms of the water recycling and supply aspects. Jim McDaniel spoke a lot about their water action plan. There were 5 strategies that he elaborated upon, 3 of which involve a lot of effort from also the department or the Bureau of Sanitation. One of those strategies was in the area of water conservation. Some of the accomplishments that we have made as an outcome of the Integrated Resources Plan are that through the collaborative efforts of many of the departments in the city, Water and Power, Sanitation, Building and Safety, Rec and Park, and so on, we now have 44 of the city parks and facilities that have installed weather-based irrigation controllers. So these are electronic devices that can actually hook up to the weather forecasts and turn the water off and on to irrigate the parks based upon what the weather looks like. DWP has also increased the rebates that they do for these weather-based irrigation controllers, as well as rebates for high-efficiency toilets and urinals, which were just mentioned, and cooling water pH controllers, which help to minimize evaporation from cooling towers. Another strategy that was talked about in the Water Action Plan was that of water recycling. Some of the accomplishments that we have recently shared with the Department of Water and Power is that water from our Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant in the Valley is now being used at 3 new golf courses, Woodley Golf Course, Balboa Golf Course, and Encino. This was recently started this past summer. In addition to that, the Valley Generating Station, also in San Fernando Valley, is now using recycled water from the Tillman plant for cooling water purposes. Some of the things that we've started looking at currently that sanitation might do to promote more recycling is looking really at the operational aspects of our wastewater collection system. We are trying to see what we can do to maximize the amount of the wastewater that we can convey to our upstream water reclamation plants. And by doing so, that will provide more recycled water that can actually be used for irrigation and industrial purposes. We are also looking at our collection system in terms of the infrastructure needs that we have. There are 2 major interceptor projects that we have currently being planned, our Northeast Interceptor Sewer Phase 2 and our Valley Spring Lane Interceptor Sewer. These major projects will allow us to better control the flow of the wastewater and route it through our system so again we can make the maximum amount of that water available for recycled use. And the last component of the Water Action Plan pertains to enhancing stormwater capture. Some of the accomplishments that we have had most recently are that in July of this year, the Board of Public Works adopted our SUSM, which is our Standard Urban Stormwater Mitigation Plan guidelines, used for developers to encourage them to implement stormwater capture activities within the sites that they are developing. And we developed a hierarchy of what we would like to see to help enhance that stormwater capture component. First of all, our preference is to have infiltration systems put in place at these sites. These are aspects such as infiltration trenches or perforated pipes that will allow more percolation of stormwater into the ground and prevent some of that runoff from just going out to ultimately the ocean. Another aspect is biofiltration, which are actually planters established that will capture some of that runoff, again, to take it through and provide the benefit for irrigation of the landscape on the site. We are also looking at ways for them to capture stormwater and reuse it. We talked a little bit about this in some of the earlier sessions this morning, and that is by using cisterns and then using drip irrigation to provide more water for the area. And lastly, mechanical and hydrodynamic units. Those are more like structural implementations, mechanical devices that will capture debris and capture trash, oil and grease, and do a little bit of treatment before actually being discharged through the storm drain system. So just in summary, for the Bureau of Sanitation, we really are looking forward to working with the Department of Water and Power on this very important aspect of water recycling, water conservation, and stormwater capture. We see this as a great opportunity. There's a lot of water out there that we are treating that is available for reuse, and we're really excited about those possibilities.
Any other speakers? All right, we'll go to questions. Mr. Labange, we've got can you press a button, please? Mr. Alarcon is next, followed by Mr. Reyes. All right, you're going to be Mr. Rosendahl today. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Alarcon is Mr. Reyes. Mr. Reyes, why don't you go next?
Thank you, Council President. These relationships we're going to have with the private sector and how we talk about stormwater harvesting, filtration, green rooftops, containment of water, stormwater on the properties. Are you working with the planning department and seeing how we can look at these strategic locations and zoning patterns so that investors and developers and property owners don't know that when they're doing their plans and they're doing their development scenarios, that they know up front so that we can actually do the kind of landscaping and the kind of layout of a building and a structure that reinforces our goals.
Yes.
Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, we are working with the planning department, particularly in the area of landscape and how to use California native vegetation for landscape that will minimize water demands. You want to add?
I'm Alice Gong with the Bureau of Sanitation Watershed Protection Division. We've been working with city planning on getting developers to come in the early stages of their design because, as you mentioned, if they're seeing us at the end of their project, their floor area is pretty much laid out. There's no room for infiltration projects. So what we've asked them to do, and city planning has been very cooperative, they've been sending us their CEQA documents that they get from the developer. So that's usually the first phase of the development is filing the environmental impact report. And we've been sending letters out to the developers, letting them know that we're available to meet with them, to help them site their project, to locate the infiltration structures, or even to do some Green Street projects.
So when you look at the locations by which you juxtapose these uses to the river, are there any discussions as to what's most strategic in terms of location and how we can create incentives and how we can stimulate change that actually does reflect a riverfront district? Have you been able to get to that type of discussion?
We've seen a couple of projects that are adjacent to the river. They're mostly in the valley. We asked them to come in and talk to us. They haven't responded at this time yet. But one of our goals is to have incentives. The SUSUMP, the Standard Urban Stormwater Mitigation Plan requirements, is a requirement of the NPDES National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. So it's a requirement placed on developers. But we could use that requirement to give them an incentive to make a river development for their SUSUP improvement. So that's something we're looking into.
And is that language that we can see coming from you? Is that something we send planning to discuss with you?
It would be in conjunction with our department and planning, city planning.
So who would be the lead person on that regard?
For our department, it's Shram Karagani is our division manager, and for city planning, it's Emily Gable.
Okay, so we can ask for that in our next committee.
Yes.
Whether it's in planning or in, just the last question, and the collaboration, I know there's a partnership with Department of Water and Power, but how much collaboration is there when it comes to looking at these systems and the interface of what DWP is doing with its easements and right-of-ways and versus what you need to get done? Is there a level of discussion where you have that type of analysis?
we're working with Water and Power on several projects. We have similar goals where Water and Power is trying to recharge their groundwater basins, and for Bureau of Sanitation, Watershed Protection Division, we're trying to limit the amount of stormwater running untreated right now into our oceans. And so the goal for both of the departments is to infiltrate the stormwater instead of letting it go into the storm drain system and out to the ocean. So we're working on several infiltration projects within either city-owned property or within the public right-of-way.
Is that something you can report to the River Committee?
Yes, absolutely.
That's something I look forward to hearing.
Yes, okay.
Thank you very much.
You done? Mr. Labange?
Thank you. Who owns the water when it leaves your facility?
I believe that would be DWP.
Okay, so that's clear. And following up on Mr. Reyes's comments there, I wanted to mention, I think some of these we could break down. Ms. Hahn, I want to thank you for kicking this off today. But I'd like to hear smaller versions as it relates to like the art, parks, facilities, city facilities, buildings, that maybe certain departments may have a control on. Public Works may want to hear some things. So we'll be back at you. This is very important. I thank you.
Okay, great. Ms. Hahn.
Oh, well, what is this, closing remarks? Okay, thank you, everybody. I really appreciated it. Again, I think this was a good discussion. This all came out of the retreat that we had, where we talked about, why don't we have certain days that we talk about single issue concepts. So I appreciate all the work that all the departments did. I want to thank Jim Tebow for coming down here. And again, I have some motions that I've introduced today in relationship to this. I think the time, to act is now. We've already done some, and I just appreciate everybody's attention on this very, very serious issue that's facing us. Ed?
You have the General Manager for Environmental Affairs here. Did we want to hear from her work regarding the environment as it pertains to the river, water supply, Department of Water and Power? Do we have time for that? But she is here.
Mr. Reyes, just so that we don't run the risk of losing quorum, we are going to have follow-up reports, and at the end of our discussion today, I am going to highlight the fact that CLA has been taking notes throughout, and we will have a number of motions prepared as a result of today's single-topic meeting referred to committee and then coming back to council.
I just want to make sure we afford the General Manager of Environmental Affairs as well and allow that courtesy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your consideration on all that. So with that, no, this is not. We're not voting. I want to thank the team from the Bureau of Sanitation for their presentation. And just to summarize, let's give them a big hand. Let's give all the departments and representatives from MWD, DWP, Bureau of Sanitation, a big thanks for doing this today. This has been very informative. And just to summarize, again, the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office has been taking notes and will be preparing the appropriate motions that have arisen out of today's discussion, and they will be introduced and referred to committee for further analysis and discussion, and then ultimately come back to council. I believe we have a few public speaking cards on these items, and I don't see the individuals here in the chamber. I will call their names nonetheless. John Walsh, Zuma Dog, and then lastly, Miguel Luna. Miguel Luna?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel Luna, Executive Director of Urban Semillas, and I applaud the City Council for taking this such important, vital resource that is water into consideration of your conversations and dialogue. And also the leadership that many of you have taken on this topic, Councilman Reyes, Rosenthal, Gruhl, and Hahn Perry. I wanted to compliment the presentations you've been hearing today from your agencies and from different departments with a community and grassroots thoughts. I was walking through a neighborhood in Council District 14, and I saw, first I want to say that I am pro-development, but I did see a development that was taking place where there were about 18 pumps that was sucking water from a natural aquifer that's there and has been there for a long time. So as you're talking about, having conversations about conserving water, about penalties about water, there's some other happenings in the community where you're taking water from a natural aquifer and just dumping it to the storm drain. So, I guess I'm here to just say that and to also make myself available for these sorts of dialogues as where do we need to go to so we can stop these things from happening in the future? What sort of dialogues do we need to start having with, I guess I'm asking for guidance, what department handles that, and how can we avoid that from happening in the future? Because it really is unfair for the communities to be conserving water at any rate, whether it be using a cup for brushing their teeth and then having the city perform these tasks. So please, I ask that, if this can be looked at in particular, the address is 4547 Eagle Rock Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker will be Connor Everts.
That's right. Thank you very much. My name is Connor Everts, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California Watershed Alliance. I also work with Green LA, and for many years I've worked with Dorothy Green. I'm chair of a POWER organization, Public Officials for Water Environmental Reform. In her honor, probably at this point, we'll be having our conference November 6th and 7th, if you're interested in more water issues statewide. First, I'd like to thank the agencies who presented today. We do work with all of them. I think we've got a rare moment here where there is integration and we're moving forward on these issues. Yet I have to say, having done this for many years and been a drought coordinator during the long drought, I've actually been through 3 droughts in this state. In Pasadena, where we saved up to 37% of the water. It's a serious undertaking we have to take, and we really have to let the public know. This is a drought of drastic proportions, and yet, as Dorothy Green would say, we're not short of water, we just mismanage water. The opportunities with community-based organizations, as I've been talking to with LADWP, to again do what they did with providing jobs through new technologies, needs to be stepped up. We have the opportunity for people to use dual meters where they have outside water usage. That needs to be easier to do. We actually implemented at my mom's house, who seems to want to have a English perennial garden in the San Fernando Valley, to cut our water usage. But I do want to say that after this meeting, based on this, because we do want to have an equal voice based on the community-based groups and the environmental groups who are now looking at water supply as well as water qualities as joint issues we want to work with, that we were going to start a Southern California Water Caucus and then take those suggestions to a statewide meeting in Davis tomorrow where over 60 organizations are meeting to discuss how we can better implement truly environmental water conservation solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the public speaker cards on this item. So, Mr. Clerk, do you need to open the roll on that? All right, that will be receive and file then? Just a report? Nothing? Oh, great, thank you. Note and file, whatever. Okay, thank you. What's the next item?
Item 9, call special for cards.
All right. First speaker, Mr. John Walsh. Second speaker, Mr. Matthew Dowd. John Walsh, Matthew Dowd. One more time, John Walsh, Matthew Dowd. Neither is present in the chamber. Again, no speakers in the queue. Mr. Clerk, do we need to open the roll on that? Please open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Next item.
Item 22, called special for cards, and a substitute motion has been circulated.
All right, great. Let's see. Don't have... I believe that card, that speaker has withdrawn his request to speak, so we can open the roll on the motion. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those motions are posted and referred.
There's an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Gruhl requests to be excused Wednesday, October 8th and Wednesday, October 22nd for city business. Those both meet council policy.
All right. Councilmember Gruhl is excused.
Desk is clear.
All right. No other requests? All right. Does that clear the desk? Yes. All right. Great. Members, are there any announcements? Any announcements? Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. I can always count on you. All right. Any adjourning motions? Please rise for adjourning motions. If there are no adjourning motions, I actually have an adjourning motion. All right. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Mr. Saul Davidaw. Mr. Davidaw passed away last Tuesday. He was a hero to his family and a well-respected and admired friend. He was the father of Robert Davidaw, a dedicated and active board member for A Place Called Home, a long-standing community and youth outreach center located in the heart of Council District 9. APHC, as it is often called, offers opportunities for children and young people to have a safe environment in which they can learn, live, and grow. Mr. Davidaw is survived by a host of family members and friends, and he will be missed by all who knew him. There's a second by Ms. Hahn, and also one other adjourning motion of memory of Jose Silva, who passed away after a fatal accident this past Saturday. Well, it's been a while. Actually, he passed away September the 27th. He was struck by a hit-and-run driver after leaving a football game at his alma mater, Cathedral High School. He was a remarkable man whose tremendous loyalty, passion, and vision helped shape and cultivate the lives of countless individuals. Since 2001, Mr. Silva had been involved as an advisory member of the Imaging Sciences and Technology Academy at Manual Arts High School, volunteering his time as a counselor, tutor, mentor, and advisor to students of ISTA. He would talk to parents and students to assure them that their involvement in their child's life was critical for their success in high school and college. He was an absolute hero to his family and a trusted and compassionate friend. His family has asked that we all keep his memory in our prayers, and he will truly be missed by all who knew him.
President, if I may, I was speaking with the family, and I was trying to coordinate so that the family could be present here today. Here when we did this, but now we've done it. I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
That I apologize. We're trying to get their family here. They wanted to be here.
Okay.
At this adjournment, but I did want to say that Joe Silva was one of our freshmen when I was a senior in high school. He was an incoming ninth grader. His parents are hardworking laborers. They realized the dream. Mr. Silva, as you have described, was one of those folks who never forgot where he came from. He always gave back. He's a graduate of Occidental College. He was one of my brother's best friends, and it was sad to hear what happened to him. What's incredible is his humbleness. He always tried to give younger folks who grew up in the environments we grew up in a sense of hope. And he did it in a very respectful way. He cherished his parents, his family, and he continued to do that throughout his professional life as an engineer. And he did it without asking for any accolades or awards. He did it out of the goodness of his heart. We're going to dearly miss him. And on behalf of the Cathedral family, may God bless him and his family. Thank you.
Maybe we can get a copy of what we said today and make sure that the family gets a copy.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. If there are no other adjourning motions, Mr. Clerk, if you would please call the roll. This concludes the City Council meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.